These are 100 of the most disturbing things on Reddit, from disgusting subreddits with thousands of members to some seriously unsettling posts, and we're not just going to skim the surface, we'll take a deep look into each subreddit and post. So, without further ado, let's begin. Cunny Milkers. This is a private subreddit run by a vomit queen. There isn't much known about this subreddit, at least till this day, since it's now private, which I can only assume is so that people don't look further into it. The subreddit itself is a mystery as it went private after a separate user made a post on the subreddit while this sub exists with the title, "A subreddit run by a literal pedophile that's been up for 4 years, WTAF. The sub itself is a small community. A screenshot showed 7 online at the time of taking it. The screenshot itself showed a picture of Anpu and another character, saying the age of consent is 8. While researching, I discovered a neocities.org page belonging to Vomit Queen. His bio reads, "Hi, I'm Vomit Queen, occasional doer of things. I have a passion for lolicon artwork, among other drawn fetishes. I also like Ojamajo, Doremi, and loud music. Kindness ruled the world." Linking his archive.org site of his subreddit, his Twitter, and some other art pages, his Twitter containing lolicon artwork, including not safe for work artwork of Anpu-chan, on his edits page, it consists of more and more drawings or posts getting more deranged as you scroll. The first post saying, "Sexualized underage girls." This isn't a joke, by the way. One post is a compilation of sentences and drawings, the base picture being what seems to be a hospital room, 3 eyes in a row, and a figure of a man in the corner. The writing says, "Granddaddy Y," and "I was just a kid," and "sick," with the last thing being, "Violence is an art, your body, the Mona Lisa." From what I could find, Vomit Queen is someone who likes a character called Anpu Sagawa, but he calls her Anpu-chan often. She was born in 1991, and the anime she's from came from 1999, making the character 8 years old, at least at the start of the show. We can only assume that this is the reason why he posts often about the age of consent being 8. On his archive page, it contains what is listed as "things that happens to me," which people have pointed out that it sounded as if he was going through a psychosis because of one line he wrote, "Voices demanding I piss on my dresser, desk, and carpet. They will not stop." Further down the page, you'd see CP of a tan Asian girl with a pigtail and glasses getting raped. Quote, "The name Cunny Milkers comes from a term used to refer to rabbits and vaginas, but more recently and digitally on 4chan's TV forum to refer to movies with child nudity, which ended up calling lowly characters cunnies, and milkers most likely means their breasts," unquote, says Vomit Queen himself. Quote, "And that is not an admission to looking at that material. That is a log of my psychosis-induced hallucinations from years ago, which was not due to drug use, but rather traumatic experiences in the real world that I have been largely able to heal from since then. I do not have any sort of that kind of material on me at all. I am not some crazy freak pedophile or whatever, and to be honest, I'm a bit exhausted from seeing people finding someone they don't understand and coming to wild conclusions because of it," unquote. He continues by saying he would never be attracted to kids in real life, but Redditors had a hard time believing that as a whole. A Redditor that messaged him said, "Yeah, I DM'd them. Apparently they don't have psychosis anymore, but they also say it's some inside jokes they share on the subreddit. They also say they don't have pedophilia. Anyways, it's weird and hard to believe, considering the lowly stuff. Apparently the diary archive CP stuff was due to psychosis. Good to hear they're doing better now. I hope they get some help soon. Awkward face. The best we can hope for is that it truly was just a psychotic episode and not his actual and true thoughts." Trace an object. This is a subreddit for posting objects by Europol and Australia, used to track and identify objects to help solve child cases. It was made to help the FBI, but it has no correlation or direct affiliation with the FBI or Europol. The subreddit was made in 2017, with only approved members being able to contribute, though everyone is encouraged to look and see if they know anything, and if they think that they know a definite answer, to go to the correct official sites to submit anything they know. On the Europol site, they urge anyone who knows where even a clothing piece was distributed to come forward and let them know. Similar to Europol, the FBI has ECAP, the Endangered Child Alert Program. The Australian site is similar to both in UI, a section talking about the purpose of these sites. Taken directly from the Australian Trace an Object site, the below objects have been taken from the background of sexual abuse material involving children. Sometimes it is necessary to edit the imagery to focus on a specific area or object. If you recognize any of these objects, click on the item and provide the ACCCE with the information you have. We specifically want to trace their origin, location, country. Reports can be made anonymously. Back on the subreddit, the latest post was taken from 3 months ago, 614 upvotes and 112 comments. EUR, 19 January 2025. Do you know where this clothing item was distributed sold? Comments flooded with people trying to figure out what the shirt said. One user, Kyla Elizabeth 13, said, "Threw this together in Photoshop thinking this might be an easier image to work back from for anyone searching online." The shirt has SP written on it, seemingly having more space for more letters, with users trying to figure out what it says. It definitely looks like a football player in front of a globe of some sort, but the design looks too intricate for something you'd get from a high school, middle school, says another user. It's yet to be solved. The post is still open for anyone to put in their thoughts, like the other posts on the subreddit. Another example, FBI 05 December 2024, location of this bathroom. Users believe it's an American 1960s home. Users flooded to link the details to a possible time the house was built, with one user focused on the toilet paper holder. Old house, at least 20, when they used to build half a hole in the wall to install the TP holder. Also, wooden toilet covers are way out of use for newer houses. I truly believe it's a 1960s built home, so similar to my own it's uncanny, said user, the soggiest waffle. A user named SageX0 was able to point out the shower curtain from Walmart. I believe the curtain is this one made by Mainstays, which is a common Walmart brand. It is still listed on their app, though out of stock. We should narrow down its production. A couple scrolls down and you would see 2 more people pointing the curtain out as well, with people pointing out that they think this could be in the Midwest US, due to how the shower looks, pointing out Michigan and Ohio. To this day, this case as well is not solved, and it's still open for contributions. Pastor arrested. This subreddit is dedicated to posts talking about different pastors who have been arrested, made in 2016, and the description of the sub reads, "You've seen them." Headlines that contain the words "pastor arrested." Someone in the community who was supposed to be a trusted moral authority was caught doing a bad thing, very often of a financial or sexual nature. This subreddit is nothing more than a collection of those stories. There was a post that stated, more than 50 children were subjected to violent abuse by pedophile monks on UK Holy Island, where it was revealed that more than 50 kids were subjected to inappropriate things by the monks. Children as young as 3 years old were groomed and attacked in plain sight. And for more than 100 years, the island had been home to Calday Abbey and a small community of Trappist monks, receiving more than 60,000 visitors a year. In April, an independent review was launched after several people came forward to report allegations of historic abuse dating back more than 60 years. The review found that monks and men with criminal records who claimed to be monks were able to join the monastery without checks. They hid behind their chosen religious names to carry out horrific acts which took place while children were on summer holidays with their parents, often paid for by the Catholic Church. The monks were reckless, not doing anything to stop the attacks that Father Thaddeus was doing to the children from the 70s to the 80s. He died in 1992 without ever being interviewed. Second Taunting commented on the same post. "Yeah, we had quite a few hanging around my church growing up. The thing is, me and my best friend learned to be pretty mean because of the groping, pinching, pervert talk, trying to groom us. It sucks that we had to learn that, but at least they mostly left us alone. One of my crowning moments was when I shut this guy's hand on a door because he was trying to tickle me. They love to tickle. Then they can claim they were just playing with a kid." Second Taunting continued to talk about how common you would see these monks hanging around churches to get closer to kids. This subreddit shows how common it is for these things to happen, with posts coming in almost every day with news stories of pastors getting arrested, with a common poster being one of their mods leaming. This is where the most vile people get posted, mainly to spread awareness. An unsolved case in Australia farm. This is a post from the subreddit Let's Not Meet by user Borake111 titled "The Office in the Middle of Nowhere" from 12 years ago. When I was 19, I worked for a company that allocated labor to rural areas of Australia. Basically, what you did was tell them when you were available, and they'd send you to a remote farm for a few weeks where you do whatever they needed done. It was hard work and long hours, but good pay and good fun if you got in with a nice group of workers. They then explain how when they were on the farm cleaning bushland with 3 other guys, their boss Jeremy decided to give them the day off due to the heat that day, and the 3 other guys went to rest. But OP and their boss went to a waterhole to go swim. Jeremy didn't speak most of the ride, but suddenly asked, "Do you see that over there, beneath the 2 dead trees?" Taking a closer look, it was a blue shipping container in the middle of a barren land. Jeremy wanted to investigate while OP was feeling anxious about it. When investigating, they realized it had a padlock and a CCTV camera on both sides. OP tried to reason with Jeremy by saying the CCTV wasn't a good sign and that they obviously don't want us here, but he brushed it off and opted for cutting the padlock with bolt cutters going inside. What they saw was a cluttered office setup with flashing LEDs and plastic storage boxes all around. When they opened one, they were met with a bunch of DVDs, posters, and photos. But soon after, they realized it encased CP, and they got out of there. They went back to the farmland and called the police, but it would take half an hour for them to arrive. When they got there, they led them to the container, but inside it was on fire, even though it was still open. That meant whoever owned the stuff inside wanted it gone and was definitely watching them. This has never been solved, and OP wishes that they could. In the comments, they talk about how elaborate it was to have it in such a remote place, figuring it was because the owner knew police would take a long time to get there, and the fire was definitely started by someone physically being there after stuff was moved. Other than that, no further updates. Incels. A subreddit that was dedicated to incels, as the name suggests. Incels by definition are people who are involuntarily celibate, people who define themselves as people who can't get a romantic or sexual partner despite wanting one. They also may blame and objectify women and girls as a result of their own thinking. The ideology is characterized as the hatred of women, often through violence or hate speech, also known as misogyny. The term rose to popularity after the misogynistic acts of Elliot Rodger, named the Supreme Gentleman, and Alec Manassian in the aftermath in 2010. Back to the subreddit. On August 2nd of 2017, a Change.org petition was opened to officially ban the incel subreddit, stating that in that subreddit, the moderators themselves would ban anyone who would disagree with their hate speeches towards women. The users on that subreddit often canonize Elliot Rodger, the 22-year-old incel who, in 2014, killed 6 people and injured 14. On his YouTube channel, he claimed that being deprived of attention from women his entire life had driven him to seek retribution. On the subreddit, he was often referred to as Saint Elliot, with many praising him and claiming they wanted to follow in his path. The moderators claimed to be incels themselves, banning users who offered advice, deleting comments that disagreed with their assertions, and likely filtering posts that didn't align with the ideology. A few days before the petition went live, the subreddit went completely private. Around 250 people signed that petition, but it's unclear whether it had any impact when the subreddit was banned in November of that year. At the time of the ban, it had 41,000 members. Over time, it evolved into a subreddit filled with misogynistic abuse and rape threats, its users increasingly fueled by hatred toward women, ranging from toxic self-pity to outright violence. A reminder that no female has ever looked at you and thought you were attractive, one post read. Another beneath it said, "Women are horrible human beings in every aspect of life." In October, a user from Incels had gone into the legal advice subreddit to impersonate a woman to get advice on how to get away with SA, under the guise of asking how a rapist gets caught. The subreddit was banned along with multiple other subs for violent content due to its promotion of hate speech and violence. Since then, Reddit had promised to do better with the specificity of their rules, since their rules, in their own words, were too vague. Septic Wanks. Despite its disgusting name, this inactive subreddit seems more like a bizarre joke/shitpost more than anything. The description bluntly states, "Wanks in septic tanks. You shouldn't be here." Maybe this was a failed attempt at getting a fetish board going, but as of now there's only 10 posts visible on the sub. Some of them are just people going, "What the fuck?" while others show people bathing in septic tanks, which, yes, does exist and is a very rare fetish. Most of the comments are actually just reacting in horror. So, yeah, I think the sub itself is just one big shitpost. Pun intended. Still, the content is pretty disgusting to behold. The last post was made 5 years ago and just says, "I shouldn't be here," in all caps over and over again.
Incest
Confessions. The first thing you're greeted with upon logging into the Incest Confessions subreddit is a black and white photograph of a scantily clad couple. Couldn't find a source for it, but do these two models know where their likeness is being used? This whole subreddit isn't for people to confess to incest repentance. The users are genuinely into the ultimate taboo. As there's a rule against fiction posts and posts written with an erotic fiction writing style, the posts are all blunt descriptions of users' incestuous thoughts and actions. The comments are all cheering the depravity on, expressing envy, yearning, yada yada yada. Here are some of the top posts of recent. My son created AI images of me. My sister accidentally made me climax. Daughter just walked in on me taking care of myself in bed. Jesus fucking Christ. This one's especially creepy because it doesn't make it clear how old the OP's daughter is. There's a rule against pedophilia, but there seems to be enough plausible deniability here to shirk it. That being said, though this sub has that rule against fiction, it's not like most of these posts include picture evidence. Once again, these could just be a bunch of neckbeard fantasies. Though, with the amount of posts on this subreddit, it goes to show just how many people are into incest, and the odds that literally all of them are fake are, well, slim. Confessions. Similar to Incest Confessions, this subreddit was once a spot to post one's experience with SA. However, based on archival information, it seems this sub was not about discussing the trauma or healing, but discussing the enjoyment. Archives of the sub are limited. The sub was quarantined in 2020 and banned not long after. If you attempt to pull it up on the Wayback Machine, you'll just be boxed out by Reddit's age rating. What we do know about the sub is that, allegedly, a lot of people used it as a coping mechanism to regain control over their past traumatic essays. I'm not here to tell people how to cope, but word is, part of the reason the sub was fully banned was for an alleged tendency to allow baiting posts. The remnants of the sub include the one single post in a subreddit simply called the Rapes. In the post, a former mod of the Rape Confessions subreddit links to quarantine rape fantasy subreddits, of which there were multiple associated with Rape Confessions. The top comment of the post sees someone calling out the mod for, quote, encouraging people to continue getting essayed and abused. The OP responds by calling the commenter a Karen, which is an interesting response to such an accusation. They sort of seem to be deflecting the accusations by resorting to claims of kink shaming. These comments keep getting more concerning as they go, with one Redditor claiming to be a 14-year-old with a disturbing kink, someone who doesn't belong anywhere near these subs. It's unclear who made the original thread as the OP is deleted, but if you examine the moderators of the currently still open subreddit called The Rapes, you'll find one of the users who is also named The Rapes, who made this post with a homophobic slur. And another named Justin Ray Goo seems like a mostly normal Reddit account that hasn't been active in years, but talked a lot about Blizzard games and burgers, and also got downvoted all the time for their controversial opinions. Oh, and this user may also be a teacher, considering they were active in the Teachers subreddit. A moderator of a fantasy forum teaching children is really concerning. OP destroys his urethra. This story was from Today I Fucked Up, made 6 years ago, from The Undead Throwaway, titled Today I Fucked Up by Cheating on My Ex and Supergluing My Urethra Shut, about how he cheated on his girlfriend and she trashed his house after finding out about the cheating, then somehow supergluing his urethra shut. I came home after she messaged me telling me she knew about it to a trashed house. Everything was a mess. There were burnt books in my living room, in which I have no clue how the fire didn't spread. She spread makeup all over the walls, lipstick spelled cheater on the bedroom door, bed sheets everywhere, chairs broken, microwave broken, with a shit ton of metal in it. He then goes on to explain how he did it. I got very sad, lonely, and depressed, and didn't know what to do with myself. He talks about how he wondered if he had lube upstairs. He looked and found it, thought everything was great until it started to hurt. Quote, it started to get all sticky, but not like bodily fluid sticky. That horrible, dry, do-it-yourself sticky that you get from superglue. My ex probably poured some in there as an act of revenge, unquote. He stopped and felt this burning sensation. He called the NHS 111 to see what he should do, and they, of course, told him to go to the A&E as soon as possible since it could develop into an emergency. He drove to the hospital, and they took him in right away. Quote, "The glue had completely sealed it shut, and there was no way of getting it back to normal without surgery. Long story short, I went under, and they made it better." Unquote. The comments were split up on if the story was real or fake. The top comment saying, "I'm just gonna say it, this sounds made up." A couple of users coming to support of that comment with 1.9K upvotes. One replying with, "This reads like a bizarre fantasy by someone who found out their BF was cheating on them. I think I can speak for most guys when I say that playing with my Johnson is the last thing I'd do if I found my place trashed." A commenter by the name of Exile714 said, "Also, not a doctor, but I've worked in a trauma center and seen a lot of things get fixed. Not this though. Solvent would be my first choice, but if that didn't work, the skin would eventually shed the outer layers with the glue anyway. Also, not an engineer, but I think the glue loses its effectiveness if it's dissolved in lube. I may experiment with this later." There were more comments in support of this being real, yet those were lost in the sea of negatives. This post is now archived. Huffing community. The huffing community is another, now private community, where it seems like everyone in it had been inhaling things they really shouldn't have been. The creator of the subreddit has also made a Discord. If you try to get onto the sub, you'll be met with, "This subreddit is currently under construction to make it a recovery and harm reduction focused community rather than an Ouroboros of suffering." The Discord currently remains open, but I can only imagine the same things go on there. The posts on the sub would consist of memes, as well as recovery and active addictions. People would also go ahead and ask for advice and seek out information, but it also seems like people were there just to enable others. The posts in this subreddit are not only disturbing because these people are so deep in their addiction, willing to do anything to supply it, but it's also disturbing due to the enabling behavior of the people in the community itself. Even though the huffing community could have been taken down for having little to no moderation, public posts promoting violence, illegal activity, and self-harm, they say they're working on a way to make it harm reduction focused, but a lot of Redditors are doubting that will happen. The Discord is still open, but I can only hope the creators truly are trying to make it a better place on Reddit. Watch People Die. Watch People Die was a subreddit counterpart to the site watchpeopledie.tv, where people post and watch people die, just like the name suggests. The Reddit counterpart had been banned at the time of writing. There had been multiple posts each day on the subreddit, fatal accidents or murders. It was all on there, and people on the subreddit loved to watch and post their comments talking about each post. The people in each video or GIF never died quickly or painlessly. These posts were easily accessible to anyone who joined, and still is, since the site is up and running. The subreddit was created in 2012, and it grew until March 2018 when Motherboard reported the top post being of a teenager's death to blackmail on 4chan. And to nobody's surprise, Reddit took down Watch People Die for violating their terms of service. Since the subreddit was public, if you didn't want to watch anything, you could get an idea from each post's title. Prison guard slams inmate to death as an example. The front page of the sub mentioned, "This community is intended to observe and contemplate the very real reality of death. We are attempting to provide a service by showcasing this content." While the subreddit is now banned, people throughout the years have fought for its reinstatement, stating how it was unacceptable to ban Watch People Die but keep others up, how the sub reminded of the dangers of reality, how anyone could die in a moment. But others never saw it that way, saying it was right for it to be banned. Yet the people wanting it back are the ones saying it made them feel lucky to be alive. But the activity on the post said something different. Many people would laugh at the person dying, saying they had it coming or they deserved it. I recall seeing someone laugh at the way someone had passed. The whole community had been a mixed pack. A user stated, "This is not the subreddit it seems like from the outside. It's not a place where we laugh and make fun of people's deaths. The reason we keep coming back is because it really shows us how precious life is." He elaborated further. "Sometimes you have to watch someone die to appreciate being alive, and it was well received. Most people liked being there, enjoyed seeing the posts, and most of them would contribute. But it's a good thing the sub is banned." They stated that any child dying by the hands of an adult is banned there, but if it was accidental, it's alright. In and of itself, that statement as a whole is flawed. The longest-serving moderator had disagreed when they said some would be banned, others not, stating that he thinks no content should have been banned while others weren't. Either way, the subreddit most likely will stay banned. Sleep tripping. By their own definition, the sleep tripping subreddit is dedicated to gaining experiences and pleasure through the forceful deprivation of sleep, with one rule saying nobody is allowed to shit on sleep tripping. Sleep deprivation through forceful means itself is dangerous due to a multitude of different health factors it could affect, including multiple functions of the brain. The subreddit is full of people talking about how long they have stayed up, talking about taking stimulants to stay up, and tips on how to break their own records. Posters have said they've stayed up from 40 hours to 96, encouraging it as they paint it as pure fun with little acknowledgement of the potential dangers. Extreme sleep deprivation can lead to serious physical and mental health issues. Despite this, the subreddit remains up and semi-active. Jason in Hell, mother who killed her sons. This comes from a post originating from user Jason in Hell. I'm 30M, having a hard time coping with my wife, 29F, having cheated on me with our neighbor, 51M. The post that had led to the tragedy of 2 child deaths due to their mother. The original is now archived and deleted, but users have recovered it, as well as a series of posts starting with the above title. I was working a lot of hours, 60 plus per week, and was noticeably stressed. It was in May of 2015 that I noticed she had added a password to her phone. When confronted about it, she told me it was because she was planning my Father's Day present. OP then talks about how she told him she felt guilty due to keeping the secret. It struck me as odd, as in our 6 years together, she had never said she felt guilty about anything and always insists that she never regrets anything in her life. Time goes on, her phone is still password protected, and things don't feel right. I see her using her phone and smiling to herself more and more often, but when I ask her what she is doing, she says nothing and puts her phone away. OP then talks about how he waits for her to be in the shower to look at her phone, finding messages with the neighbor. I am all covered in frosting. You want to lick it off? He then realizes there were more but recently deleted, thinking it was weird, but he thought she would never hurt him. I can't help but worry that something isn't right, so I start checking her location using Google Timeline. It was at this point that I realized that there are large gaps in her GPS history because she was turning off her phone's GPS. OP then talks about how he installed a spying software on her phone under the guise of an antivirus. He continues to discuss how the neighbor and his wife spend more time together, trying to find a time to meet up and have sex, monitoring her activity, finding more messages as they come through. Then he tells her, "You're my girl now," to which she replies, "Always have been," ending with him writing, "and always will be." OP had confronted them, and his wife denied everything, telling her that he's going to leave her. They came to the conclusion of her going to her mom's house while he thought things through. She told the kids he didn't want them because he was mad at her. So he begged his wife to stay in order to protect the kids, making him apologize to the neighbor so they can still hang out with him and his girlfriend. He found her sending the neighbor pictures again, and after that, he couldn't sleep, and his performance at work took a fall, and he talks about how he thinks he's stuck and trapped with her now, unhappy, ending the original post saying he doesn't know how to move on. In the next update, I Am Taking Your Advice, he talks about how he is finally going to meet an attorney to serve her divorce papers. But the day after, disaster struck, and news came out that his wife, Brandy Worley, killed their 7-year-old son and 3-year-old daughter, attempting to end it as well, saying, "Now you can't take the kids from me." The final update came 2 years later in 2018, telling everyone how he is getting better every day and will continue to get better, talking about how he did not disagree with her sentencing, being 120 years. Jason in Hell has deleted his account, still gaining support to this day, and I can only hope he pulls through even more. I stood by and allowed my wife to almost kill our son, and I was happy she did it. This story comes from user Crazy Son Throwoff, talking about how since his therapist told him to write out his feelings, he decided he would get his feelings about his son off of his chest. My son was very troubled, continuing on to say his life was like the movie We Need to Talk About Kevin, except his son didn't have any sort of filter. His insanity seemed to be the same around everyone. From the day he was born, my son just came out wrong. He was planned. My wife and I tried to get pregnant and were ecstatic when he was born. He was wanted and loved. We showered affection on him and really tried to give him a happy childhood. OP then talks about a moment where his son cried for 13 months straight, bringing him to doctors, specialists, and had tried changing his diet, giving him more affection, yet nothing changed. He only moved on to anger instead, seeming to be angry at being alive, taking pleasure in being evil and causing pain. The next thing he mentions is how he would destroy everything as soon as he could walk. Then, when he was 9 to 15, he would pee and poop in the parents' bed, and then the hallway, grinding it into carpets so they couldn't clean it. When he was 16, they had another kid, a girl this time, and according to them, she was completely normal. And the son kept on acting out, getting worse once they brought their daughter home. At 17, they would fight daily, and his son would leave for hours or a day at a time, and he started to look forward to it so that he could leave them alone. After the birth of our daughter, my relationship with my son was almost entirely gone. Our only real interactions were screaming at each other. My wife was even worse with him. She just had nothing left. By that time, if our son even came into the same room as her, she would just stop whatever she was doing and start screaming, "Get the fuck away from me! Get away! Get the fuck out!" This ended in them locking themselves away from him, feeling like prisoners. One day, they fought in the morning, and his son left like usual, only to come back with a knife, heading straight for their daughter. Their daughter started to cry in terror. They ran in and saw him dragging the knife on her belly and arms. When he looked at his parents, he smiled. In fear, they both moved, but his wife was quicker, punching their son in the face. Punches flew out and landed on their son. He watched his wife, hearing their son yell genuinely for her to stop, but she kept going, landing punches to his body when he covered his face. He took their daughter and helped her while he heard his son telling his wife he would kill her. After the ordeal, he had seen their son completely battered, not sure if he should take him to the hospital or call the cops or an ambulance, but he realized he simply did not care, leaving him to die or live on his own. They left the house to him as they lived in the basement, living in fear as he one day damaged the whole house and suddenly disappeared. OP lived in fear that he would someday ambush him and kill him, but never did. Later on, they moved and were finally feeling safe. Since then, the poster lives with his now 31-year-old daughter and her husband. His wife unfortunately passed away from cancer in 2016. The poster hopes his son has overcome his demons and lived a normal life. Guro. Created in July of 2010, this subreddit is focused on the Japanese-originated erotic art form Guro or eroguro, putting a focus on eroticism, sexual corruption, and decadence, and as a term, it is used to explain something that's both erotic and grotesque. The grotesqueness from the term refers to things that are malformed and/or horrific, and the term is usually used and mistaken by Westerners for gore. The posts on this subreddit are exactly what you would expect. Fantasies about having intercourse with characters while they are tortured, killed, dismembered, and more. Flares for each post are more disturbing as you look on, including necrophilia by itself, as well as a post indicating a childlike character being handled by two other grown men, as the post is titled, "Doing a woman while she stays like that is a dream," while the comments swarm in and agree. Art of childlike characters getting mutilated and tortured for their desires and pleasure are all around this sub, while nobody does anything to implement the no underage characters rule. Another rule is you must be 18, but I'm not sure if that's a rule that's been followed up on. A common theme is girl characters who are completely helpless while they are tortured, and the people posting are fantasizing about being the inflictor, which brings me to wonder if they want to do this in real life, additionally begging the question, are they dangerous people? An Imager post shows a user asking where to find more stuff like the Gudo subreddit. Someone asking, "You like watching little girls get stabbed?" To which the user replies, "Quite a lot of us would enjoy that," which in and of itself with context to what Gudo entails is quite disturbing. Many people on the sub fantasize about control and being able to torture, kill, and indulge in necrophilia, hence the necrophilia being a flare on the subreddit. The subreddit is fairly active, as it has its own Discord, 221,000 members, and posts almost every single day. And I don't think it will be banned anytime soon, since it's been up for quite a while. Eating myself for curiosity. A post by user Incredibly Shiny Shart on the I Am A subreddit with the title, "Hi y'all, I am a man who ate a portion of his own amputated leg, ask me anything." He goes into further detail in the post. So the quick and dirty. About 2 years ago, I was hit on my motorcycle. They salvaged my foot, but I would never be able to walk on it. I elected to have it amputated. I asked the doctors to keep it. I signed some papers, I got it back, and with the help of some friends, cooked a portion of the tibialis anterior. He linked some proof called foot tacos and me and my stump. He ended the post with, "Let's do this," and the following edit. "I taste like buffalo but chewier, super beefy and a little fat." Comments did flood with questions, and OP delivered with the answers, some being, "It seems like you shared it with others from the photos you posted. Who else ate it? Also, I am just curious. From the first picture, it seems like you only damaged your foot. So why did they amputate so high up? Do you know?" The following answer: 10 of my friends joined in for a brunch. Only the foot was damaged, but with below the knee amputations because I wanted it higher up, so there's a balance between having enough stump to make for a good lever and having enough room beneath for prosthetic equipment. If they amputated low, it would have made it difficult to put good hardware underneath. Someone else asked, "Lots of people have asked you to describe the taste, but I would like to ask you to rate the taste. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good was it? How does it compare to steak or bacon or other meats you've tried?" OP responded with, "That is a fantastic question. On this scale, I would give it a solid 6.5, but keep in mind that I have had a lot of good food. So it's way better than a hot dog or regular burger. Maybe equal with regular bacon, which is pretty decent, but nowhere near as good as butter-seared sea scallops or a rare sous vide tenderloin seared in grape seed oil in a cast iron pan." The following question: was there a lot of pressure to prepare it just right because it was, I'm super hoping, your last shot at tasting human flesh? The OP responded with, "Not really. I'm pretty sure we would have eaten it if it was just fried. We were not looking to go all Hannibal and get gourmet just to make it so no one gagged." When it comes to OP, this is called, usually, autocannibalism or self-cannibalism, when someone eats parts of their own body either as a disorder, symptom, or as a choice, like OP talks about in his post and the comments. People did question why anyone would do such a thing, but I think it comes from simple, morbid curiosity. I actually have done an explorative video about cannibalism. It is an incredible deep dive exclusively on my Patreon. If you are interested in something like that, go right ahead and check it out. Otherwise, let's move on. Was I raised by Mr. Cruel? This is a post by a user, Corrupted, on the Unsolved Murders subreddit, talking about how they think they could have been raised by Mr. Cruel. For context, Mr. Cruel was the name of an unidentified serial child rapist who had captured 3 girls in the northern and eastern suburbs of Melbourne. He has never been identified. OP starts by saying, although they have no definitive evidence and it's all coincidental, they say the coincidences are too much. They first talk about their childhood and how it was quite abusive while growing up with their stepfather, mother, and stepbrother. Their stepdad and mom went over to Victoria from Tasmania to watch the brother march out after his army training. They were gone from about late August to mid-September 1987, matching the dates of the first crimes Mr. Cruel committed. Later on, the idea of moving there was proposed, and the family relocated to Melbourne on the 5th of October 1987. When the story broke out of the first capture, the stepdad would tell OP, as a kid, to shut up and keep quiet so he could listen to the news, specifically when it came to Mr. Cruel. He was also very interested in other true crime stories. OP mentions Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, and others. They believed that he was in the defense force, I think because of how clean he was. My stepbrother was in the army, but my stepfather was also a manic neat freak. OP then mentions how police initially thought they were looking for a redhead, but both the stepbrother and stepfather are brunettes, though when growing facial hair, it had appeared red. The police also thought that their suspect was from either Tasmania or New Zealand, due to some colloquial language that the abducted girls heard. Earlier in the post, OP stated they are from Tasmania. One of the last coincidences OP mentioned was the belief that the first abductions by Mr. Cruel occurred from late August to mid-September, a period when both the stepfather and stepbrother were present, and that the last abductions happened around September or very early October 1992. These dates are important because, against my wishes, and against my stepfather's wishes, my mother insisted we move back to Tasmania, and we left Victoria on October 5th, 1992. Around the same time that we moved back to Tasmania, my stepbrother moved from Victoria to Queensland. So now both my stepfather and stepbrother were no longer in Victoria, although both of them had been there during the times that Mr. Cruel was active. OP mentions how their biological father doesn't match the description, but their brother had. OP then says they wouldn't be surprised if the two had acted together because each of them knew of the other's fetish sadistic behaviors. Lastly, they noted that one of the victims reported hearing airplanes overhead. The family lived near the international airport and directly beneath the flight path of many flights. They further stated that one description of a room one of the girls was kept in matched a room that their brother had been renting while living out of state in the army, until just before they moved back to Tasmania, when he was living on base due to being a chef. Ever since they moved out of Victoria, Mr. Cruel has been quiet. OP told a police officer about everything, but never followed up as they lost contact. Police did charge the stepbrother with abuse against OP, but that was the last development. It is truly frightening to consider whether their stepfather or stepbrother could have been Mr. Cruel. 2 broken arms. This is a post on IMA, where the OP, whose account is now deleted, talks about how he had a taboo relationship with his mother, posted 14 years ago. The 2 broken arms title comes from a comment OP had posted. Well, without giving away too much info, I was injured in an accident at 14 and incapacitated. I went from masturbating 2 times a day to 0. After 2 weeks, I was frustrated and took it out on my parents. My mom and dad knew what was up and talked about my mom helping me. They approached me one afternoon, and when my mom said, "I know you are frustrated, and why you are frustrated, would you like some help?" Blood was rushing in my ears, and I said yes, but I really didn't know if she meant what I thought she meant. I was excited and confused. She said that she would take care of me when I went to bed, hours away. The post itself says, "When I was in my teens, I had a taboo relationship with my mother. I think that we would both characterize the experience as positive. Please feel free to ask anything, but I will not discuss anything that would reveal my identity. Recently, my mom and I spoke with a researcher that is studying examples of incest that were not traumatic. He is preparing a paper on the subject. I am not an advocate for incest. For whatever reason, it worked for us. Don't use my experience as a template. I am here to relay my experience, not debate incest as a subject." Then he continues on by adding questions that he answered in preparation. It started when I was 14. My mom was 37. I have an older sister that was unaware and not involved. My dad knew about it from the beginning and supported my mom's decision. It ended around college. OP talks about how the researcher had verified both the mom and OP's identity for the research, and he reached out to the subreddit mods to verify the post. It was also verified that he is who he said he was, and that his practice was in child psychology and sexual research. In a later update, he states that his father and his sister did not have any similar relationship as the commenter suggested, and that he brought it up in the first place with his mom when their own relationship progressed, and she said that his sister wouldn't want that and his dad wasn't interested. She said that my dad was jealous of the relationship that mom and I had, but that he harbored no lustful thoughts towards my sister. Other than comments, there are no more updates. The top comment is asking when they did it. He replied about how his mom started it and how they would only speak of it when his dad wasn't near, and how he would never tell anyone he knew. He also spoke about how it was a purely intimate relationship. Since then, his account has been deleted, and no one knows where he is now. I hope he stays lost. This is weird. I am not proud of my son. On July 29, 2013, a throwaway account by the username Captain1958 made a post to Off My Chest, a subreddit for, quote, long-standing baggage, happy thoughts, or recent trauma. The dyspeptic, sarcastic post tells an older man's story of raising his single son from infancy. It begins by explaining that his son has just graduated college and gotten himself a job, which the OP claims his son demands praise and affection for. OP refuses the demands. The OP explains that he and his wife gave their son every opportunity they could, something that he expects no praise for, as it's what he is supposed to do. The OP goes on to describe how this idyllic upbringing didn't prevent their son from starting to shoplift at age 15. By age 16, it had become drinking and smoking marijuana. Not good, but far from unusual for a rebellious teen. Things instantly take a disturbing turn when the OP explains that, while repeating a year of school, he believes his then 17-year-old son had gotten into an intimate relationship with a 13-year-old girl and had to be pulled out of school. In an apparent act of retaliation, the OP's son does the unthinkable. One night, the son snuck into their shared bedroom while OP was out on a trip and molested his own mother at knife point. He doesn't know the exact details, as his wife never shared, but as he explains, the son ended up fleeing, calling his friends to brag about what he'd done, and getting arrested. It's here that OP notes, "I know if I'd have been home, or if I'd caught him, I'd have killed him with my bare hands." Unfortunately, though the son is tried and placed in prison, the story does not get any better. OP explained that his wife divorced him, likely because he was a physical reminder of their son before ending it. The son only laughed in OP's face during subsequent visits and continued to show a sadistic personality. The son was released from prison after just 3 years, bounced in and out of rehab, and wound up moving in with a sympathetic aunt. OP's next encounter with the son begins with crocodile tears and ends with the son breaking a window and slashing OP's tires. OP ends the post by lamenting watching his friends and neighbors raise successful kids that grew into doctors, lawyers, skilled tradesmen, actors, musicians, academics, entrepreneurs, and career military. Though the son claims to be on an upswing, OP has no sympathy for his recovery and doesn't believe he's changed. He ends the post with, "I am not proud of my son. I am sorry for inflicting him upon the world." Can people change? It's a controversial idea. However, I'm sure we all can agree that we don't need to allow someone who crossed the line with us back into our lives. Cumbox. This one's pretty self-explanatory. You might have seen the Justin Wang video on it, but the common thread is actually not the end of the story. It begins with a post on Ask Reddit with a throwaway account. Throwaway time. What's your secret that could literally ruin your life if it came out? If you go on this thread now, you'll actually have to scroll through a lot to get to this particular comment, but the whole thing is kind of a goldmine. In this disturbing instance, however, a user that has since been deleted, named Linfect, responded to the prompt with this. "Cousin died when we were both 17. There was a reception at his house just after the funeral. I went into his room and stole all the money that was there. Took some other valuables that his parents wouldn't realize were gone. No one knows that I did it. They just assumed he didn't have any money in his room. Only loose change. I don't regret it, but I will never admit I did it. Also my cumbox." When prodded for more information on the cumbox, however, Linfect explains that he's got a little shoebox that he uses all the time. One day he needed a place to get off, and lo and behold, he had an empty shoebox. He just kept using it after that. Apparently, he tried to set it on fire one day, but when all of his ejaculate kept the shoebox too moist to burn, he simply went back to using it. He acknowledged that he's probably a very disturbed individual and that he hates and loves his cumbox. Since the Linfect account is deleted, it's hard to find more info on this whole shindig, but we did find a post on the Best Of subreddit acknowledging the cumbox where Linfect actually reared his head. "It got far more attention than I ever expected," Linfect says, to which someone who decided to actually scroll this guy's account responds, "Dude, you are literally insane. Just checked your submission history, and 99% of it is to pics of dead kids." So he spends his days searching the internet for pictures of dead kids and using the box. He also said he has strange pleasuring habits. This user also included several links to disturbing comments Linfect made, some of which are now defunct, but the ones that work include him telling someone to hit their dog with a shovel. Apart from this guy being a seriously messed up individual, some people in the original cumbox thread are actually encouraging him. There's one responder who says, "LOL, don't let the trolls make you feel like a psycho. Everyone has social oddities. It's weird, no doubt, but it doesn't mean anything." Hold my feeding tube. Another Live Leak Light subreddit, this one mostly focuses on brutal accidents that result in injury. The description reads, "A place to watch people come to the neck-breaking realization that somebody is going to have to hold their feeding tube." The implication of the feeding tube part being that the victims of the accident will become paralyzed, and thus will need someone to hold a feeding tube for them. It's a play on the turn of phrase, "hold my beer." Each post starts with HMFT, similarly to the way posts on the Hold My Beer subreddit are tagged. The theming is an example of the darkest form of humor, twisting a common phrase people use before doing something stupid, silly, or dangerous to reflect the consequences of doing something stupid, silly, or dangerous. It seems, at least to some extent, the users do enjoy watching this stuff. Though, interestingly, the sub has strict rules including "don't be a meanie," which can include saying people deserve to be hurt, and "no animals getting injured, humans only." Watching these videos can be a firm reminder of how fragile the life we know is. In most of them, the people who get brutally injured aren't even really at fault. Any of us, if we aren't already, could end up on a feeding tube because of someone else's decision at basically any moment. Dragons fucking cars. As this sub's description notes, it's exactly what it says on the tin. Dragons fucking cars is another subreddit for a niche fetish, albeit one that is only depicted through visual art. I can't tell you where exactly this fetish comes from. But in a world of inflation and vor, you can probably parse out that it's some feral power dynamic thing. Honestly, this is one of the most tame entries on this list. Like, yeah, it's gross and disturbing to most of us normies, but a lot of the subreddit has a memey, ironic tone, like this one post showing an awkwardly placed car statue in front of a dragon. The best part is the 4 rules. Rule 1, posts must have a dragon doing a car. Fair enough. Rule 2, no why does this sub exist posts. The sub exists. We don't need posts asking why. Also fair. Nobody owes us an explanation. Rule 3, no aftermath pictures. We've all seen the Hagfish picture, and it's been posted here many times. We don't want more of those cars covered in slime pics. And Rule 4, all AI-generated art must be flared. TIFU by snacking on a homeless guy's anus. This one's just really gross. It comes from a now archived thread on the subreddit TIFU, which stands for Today I Fucked Up, and is meant to share recent mistakes with big consequences. A user explains how his hormones got the best of him. Basically, the OP seems to enjoy the trashy side of hooking up, and explains how he goes looking for quick lays on the weekends. Somehow, he finds a dirty-looking homeless man winking at him, quote, connecting with his boner, and he ends up doing this guy in a back alley. He describes in detail the homeless man's sick, shallow, lone teeth and how dirty he was. And yet, the OP did it, describing the aromas and textures all the way through the whole ordeal. Then, OP gave the homeless guy $50 for some reason, despite how it seems like he didn't enjoy the experience. I don't know, this definitely could just be someone's dirty fantasy they posted to get a reaction, but it is a tough read. Still, I suppose being unwashed and unhosed shouldn't mean you're not allowed to have a fling once in a while. Slept with grandmother. The origin of this copypasta seems muddy, so we could probably use some more information on it if anyone has any. There exists a throwaway Reddit account named Nana Took My Virginity, but it's unclear if the person who wrote this copypasta is the same person as this account because he only has 3 posts that aren't deleted and don't match the text. The actual copypasta that is still floating around is rough. It tells the story of a reserved, traumatized young man who'd been picked on his whole life for his weight and appearance. The story clearly takes place in Britain, perhaps urban London, given it's written with a rather slurry English tone. If possible, can any Englishmen shed light on if this sounds like a real dialect? Anyhow, the narrator grew up in a fractured household with only a single mom, having not met or knew who his father was for most of his life. He explains that after years of mild social isolation and no luck with the ladies, he winds up at a party in a shady house and meets a 60-something-year-old woman. The young man ends up having intercourse with the woman upstairs before stumbling home hungover the next morning. His mom reprimands him for it, but not for partying. Instead, she just demands he stays away from that house he came from. When the narrator's friend ends up telling his mom he spoke to the older woman, his mom freaks. As the OP wrote, she admitted to me that the woman I met was my biological grandmother and her son was my biological father. So, yeah, dude came to a horrifying realization in that moment. But to this day, his mom does not know he lost his virginity to his grandmother. The narrator became even more withdrawn and closed off because of the trauma, but his mom only suspects that it comes from taking drugs for some reason. The copypasta ends with, yeah, so that is my fuck up in life. What is yours? P.S. I have a fetish now for old ladies, and it stemmed from my trauma. So, is this a real story? Maybe. Though it seems odd that the OP apparently never asked who his real grandmother was. I guess it's not out of the question for the dangerously aloof type, just really weird. That being said, you can rest knowing that there's no real evidence that proves this isn't just written for shock value. I am leaving my wife and evil son. Another man wrestling with making a monster. This post comes from a throwaway, one that hasn't posted any updates since its creation in February 2017. The post starts, "Our son is a bad person." I'm not talking teenager who gets into trouble, I'm talking straight up evil, like a villain on TV. The OP only describes a few things his son did, but he says that they don't even scratch the surface of his kid's depravity. Once again, he explains that they gave their son everything they could, but it seems like he was just born a sadist. The OP then explains what motivated him to make the post. When his son heard that a fellow high school student suffered a miscarriage, he went out and purchased a baby doll. He covered the doll in blood and animal guts and gave it to the grieving girl as a present. The OP's wife manages to defend their son, even through this horrifying incident, as she always has. As he notes, her dad is connected here and has tons of cash. My wife continues to use money and influence to keep him from being locked up. I have a huge problem with this, because this is causing hurt to other innocent people. The incident today isn't even on the list of worst things he's done. Ever since their son tried to set a kid's birthday presents on fire, she's done nothing but defend his heinous behavior. So the OP jumps ship before their son does something even worse, ending the post with, "But now I am leaving them. I will not support them. I cannot. This kid is going to do something terrible one day, and I just can't be the one enabling it." Vagina bacon. Popping is a little guilty pleasure subreddit for sharing videos of popping, as in manually extracting gross and nasty things from one's body. It's mainly for pimple and cyst popping videos, but pretty much anything of that ilk that can be deemed oddly satisfying is welcome, like ingrown hair and tonsil stone removal. It's a little gross, but not all that bad. Besides this one episode, this post that I'm not going to show any footage from, especially given the Imager link is now defunct anyhow, reads as follows. This may not be the appropriate place, but I menstruated this today. What the fuck am I looking at? The image showed what could only be described as a long, bloody clod in the rough shape of a piece of bacon. The OP then later commented, "Well, Reddit, I've done the unthinkable. Hopefully this won't get buried under these great comments." After so much wonderful feedback, I decided to go through with STLunatic15's unintentional suggestion and fry my vaginal bacon. Before anyone asks, I decided to not take a bite. I did smell it, however, and it smelled fucking delicious. So I was pretty tempted, you know? Then I remembered where it came from. One Redditor responded to the now archived thread with, "I've read and seen a lot of things on the internet. Vile things. Things like the cum box, gore, various forms of shit and vomit, the Doritos story, the Jolly Ranchers story, the list goes on. This was the first to actually make me gag. My eyes are watering as I type this. You win. I give up. I'm done with the internet for today. Wow. Simply wow. Have an upvote." How lovely. A little cumbox throwback. Maybe we should have put the Doritos one on this list. Slugs in the food. On Friday, March 13th, 2020, in the Relationship Advice subreddit, user Smallbean197 posted, "I found out my partner has been putting slugs in my food. I don't know how to forgive him." The original post was deleted, but has since been archived on the Best of Redditor Updates subreddit by user Rainbow_Drizzle. In the original, the 22-year-old OP explains that she has a generally good relationship with her 24-year-old boyfriend, and that he'd taken up baking cakes for her in the last 2 weeks. She found it sweet, but also noted that she sometimes felt dizzy after eating his cakes, which she chalked up to hormones initially. This changed when one of her BF's friends came into her work to tell her something horrifying. That her boyfriend had bragged to him that he'd been blending up slugs he caught in their garden and mixing them into the food he'd been giving her. The friend even had picture evidence that the BF had sent to him. When the OP confronted her boyfriend about this, he turned the blame on her and accused her of snooping and being unable to take a joke. The initial post ends with, "I feel disgusting. I love him to pieces, but I just don't understand his way of thinking just now. Am I overreacting? I don't know what to do. I feel lost." Terrible what manipulation and abuse can do to a person, making her question if she's somehow overreacting to the grossest thing ever. She's underreacting, really. At this point, her boyfriend is literally trying to kill her. Many people have died from consuming slugs, after all, more than you'd like to think. And she's second-guessing herself because of her affection for him and his manipulation. It goes on. The first update does not begin well. "I am receiving messages telling me to end it. Please don't do that, as I am highly sensitive just now." OP did the right thing and went to the police and the hospital. She also confronted her now ex-boyfriend again, and he confessed to doing what he called experiments that included spitting on her toast, replacing the insides of her medication with salt, replacing her vegan food with real meat, and rubbing her toothbrush in the toilet. He's just confessing off the dome at this point. Horrifyingly, OP also reported having a pet snail which went missing during her time with her boyfriend. Note that OP doesn't have the most concise grammar, likely due to her stress level, so it's kinda hard to understand this post. But it seems like she suspects he put it in her curry and disguised the taste with chili powder. The OP says her BF doesn't know why he did this, but just felt the compulsion to, and that he still loves her. Yeah, whatever. This is definitely not love, though. It's worth noting, however, that this guy was later diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, as she noted in a comment. After this, there were two more updates. In the first, the OP notes that though she's left her boyfriend, she now has become obsessive about protecting her food from any source of contamination. She also keeps finding slugs in her house, which I suspect could be a kind of paranoid hallucination. She spoke to her doctor, and all he had to say was that she needed to lose weight anyway. So, it seems like she needs to leave that doctor too. Fortunately, this does have a happy ending. Smallbean's final update goes as follows. Hello everyone. Sorry for those who I didn't get to message back. My messages have been so full. I am alive but have been sick with coronavirus. Thank you to those who have reached out to me. You all made me feel less alone. Smiley face. Hope everyone is well. She's still active on Reddit. Interestingly, she gives a lot of relationship advice on her account. She recently left a comment on Am I Overreacting, advising someone to leave her boyfriend who wouldn't do anything for their anniversary. Active pedophile. In a now archived post from September 2015 on the Confession subreddit, suspended user Pedometer made a horrifying confession that I pray to God is just a troll. Honestly, this post is so vile and horrifying that it's best we don't recite most of it for all of our sake. The OP says he wants to feel liberated by putting these things out there and tells people that want to judge him to fuck off. OP claims that pedophilia is just a sexual preference, same as being straight or gay, and that one day we'll live in a society where it is acceptable. He then goes on to claim that he is a child psychologist who has taken advantage of upwards of 20 young children, boys and girls alike, including his own daughter. He claims he's had some form of inappropriate contact with 50 to 60 children. To add to the terror, he ends the post by saying he's met a lot of other pedophiles and that it's more common than we may think. The comments are really weird too. A few people have come forward in throwaway accounts and admit that they themselves have urges towards children, that they never act on or are getting help for. They condemn the OP as a child molester who should be sent to prison. One comment reads, I found this disturbing, that you have done it with your own daughter, and use your profession to take advantage of children. I think that doing that is terrible, I must say. I don't hate you for being attracted to them, that I sort of get, but you are essaying children, and that is seriously fucked up. The language is just bizarre. The fact that he so bluntly tells the OP directly that he gets him, but that what he's doing is fucked up, is weird to see in this context. It's straightforward debate speak about the worst thing you could do to another person. 2015 was a time when trolling was loud, proud, and honestly, a lot less noticeable by the general public. Some of the OP's words read so much like calculated rage bait that I sort of suspect that's exactly what it is. Though maybe I'm just being optimistic. GF sex with dad. On July 22, 2014, throwaway user Throw350 posted the same story to multiple subreddits. All the posts are now deleted, but one has been archived as a bit of a copy pasta. The one we're going off of was posted by sub-user Death by Circle Jerk. I, 26M, think my girlfriend, 21F, is sleeping with her father. In short, the OP explains he met his girlfriend on a kink website and has a very active and fulfilling sex life with her. She often calls him daddy, which initially he didn't think much of at all. Then her father came to visit them and stay a few nights, and his girlfriend told him she'd rather not have sex while he's home because she doesn't want him to hear. OP understands this and thinks nothing of it. On night one of her father's visit, OP's girlfriend says she's gonna have a private chat with her father in the guest bedroom, which again, OP thinks nothing of, because why should he? The next night, however, while OP is half asleep, he hears his girlfriend go off to her father's once more at a late hour. When he wakes up fully and goes by the bedroom, he hears what sounds like the mattress squeaking and moaning coming from behind the door. He freezes up and doesn't have the nerve to burst in there, which is fair. He ends the post with, her dad is going to be here for another night tonight. I can't stand being around those two together now. It makes me feel sick to the stomach. So I took my laptop out, telling her that I'd let her spend some alone time with her dad for his last day here. I have no idea what I should do. Should I try to walk in when she's talking to him? I don't know what I'm going to do if they are doing what I think they are doing. I'll post an update on how things go down later tonight. As one commenter named Russ DR suggested, there was a chance this older guy wasn't her real father, perhaps just a sugar daddy she's slyly having an affair with. Despite his posts getting a lot of attention, however, and against his promises, OP never gave a real update. He did log back into Reddit 2 years later to comment on a giveaway post in the PC Master Race subreddit, where he alludes to his earlier postings. I don't post much on Reddit, but when I do, it's either to discuss my incestual cheating ex-girlfriend, or a chance to win the XTZ Earphone 12 earphones. The fact that he said in this comment made 2 years later that it was incestual means he at least thinks the guy was her father. Now, they have unsurprisingly broken up. This is the only conclusion the story will probably ever receive. New couch. You probably know Ask Me Anything. It's a popular subreddit where anyone from any walk of life can start a thread and be interviewed by the general public. This particular post begins with an OR nurse under the username Bonsai Panda, opening the floor to discussion. After Bonsai Panda posted a link to his own anecdote, JQ Public, who I think is a male based on his other posts, shared his own story. JQ Public worked in emergency mental health counseling at the time. He and a partner would visit people in times of crisis. One night, he got a call to go see a long-term alcoholic. Notably, it wasn't the alcoholic himself who called, even though they usually only see people who voluntarily ring for mental health checks. He wasn't a cop after all, but a service worker. The guy who called for the mental health check was actually the guy who'd been buying the alcoholic subject beer, an enabler, perhaps trying to undo their mistakes. Unfortunately, the OP would find the damage was already done. When they arrived at the house, there were police officers, EMTs, and a few neighbors just milling about. There's a disgusting smell coming from the house of the subject, and the paramedics are gearing up heavily and putting vapor rub beneath their nose to mask it. The OP, who grew up on a farm and dealt with a lot of smells, enters the home unfazed at first, until he sees the kitchen piled high with trash from the groceries that the subject's neighbor had been buying for him. In the living room, the OP finally sees the man that they are looking for, the alcoholic subject, seated on the couch. To his right is a large pile of beer bottles he'd been sipping on for God knows how long. There was also a path of feces and urine leading to the bathroom, with a tub filled with excrement. Right in the center of all this mess was a sad, broken man dealing with a mental issue that had taken a horrible physical toll on him. The elderly man apparently hadn't even noticed the cops until the EMTs or the OP entered the place until they turned off the TV that was somehow still running. The story kind of waffles around for a while at this point, so we'll skip to the chase. A police officer makes the mistake of trying to get the old man to stand up. When he tugs the man off the couch, they find that, as JQ Public puts it, the old guy's been in that one spot long enough that his excrement have more or less melted the fabric and foam he's been sitting on, and his clothing, skin, back, and thigh flesh have all necrotized, and the rot from that has mixed in with the couch so that it's hard to tell which is which. An awful smell emerges as the man's skin is literally peeled off the couch. He is then laid face down on a gurney, taken to hospital, and the cops lock the place up. I suppose after this horrifying sight, JQ Public had to just go on with his shift. This story ends with the following. The worst of all of it, the look in his eyes when I asked him if he understood why we were here. Hollow, dead, flat eyes with someone screaming behind them. That and my partner telling me I stunk up the van as we drove back. I have no idea that man could still be alive when he stood up. It looked like half of him had simply rotted off. People like JQ Public are another example of often unsung heroes in our society. Major respect for dealing with people during the worst moments of their lives. Unfortunately, sometimes it's just too late to help. Spicing up the sex life. Sometimes plain old vanilla just doesn't cut it. But it's important when expressing kinks that your partner be a willing participant in said kinks, every facet of them. In November 2018, a man on a throwaway account shared a story to the relationship advice subreddit of his wife crossing the line when he obliged to her unusual kink. After a few years of marriage, the OP's wife wanted to try using a strap-on with him. If you don't know what that is, you're too young to be watching this. The OP was resistant at first, but eventually he would agree when his wife insisted that it was important to her. He actually got into it, and during their second time, his wife grabbed his hair and took control. Then she told him she wanted his feces on her. OP was shocked, pushed her away, and asked if she was joking. She started crying, and OP ended up leaving for the night. He becomes distant from his wife for a while, but she insists that she wants him to do it, and they finally did it. But it didn't go well. His wife crossed the boundaries they had established. People were joking about this in the comments, but the OP notes in the end he felt violated. Quote, "She knew how uncomfortable I was with this in the first place, yet she still tried to push the boundary that we had established." He implied that he was considering divorce, but he never updated the post. Though between the crocodile tears and the wife's word choices, she does seem manipulative and controlling. Divorce was definitely the best route for the OP. The rotting dead body. On May 13, 2015, user Ragnar Lothbrok had a simple question for Ask Reddit. What is the most disgusting thing you've ever witnessed firsthand? That same day, user OKHNYC came in with what was probably the winner. He prefaces that he's a retired New York Police Department officer who worked in Brooklyn in the 80s and 90s. When he got a call for a foul-smelling odor and decadence seeping through the floors, he, quote, knew exactly what it is. He notes that he was badass for some reason, and that there's a procedure involving corpses where an officer will stay with it until the ME arrives. However, they opened the door to the apartment they were called to and found a bloated, 3-week-old corpse in bed nested with flies. OKYNYC and his partner end up going downstairs to call in the ME and do the paperwork. Protocol be damned. However, when the ME arrives and they return to the corpse, the ME feels the need to lift the body's legs. The body lets out one of those bowel-voiding dead person farts, which she notes the stench of the actual body was rose compared to the fart. I have no words and God knows I'm wordy. He follows this with words. When 2 young, inexperienced paramedics show up to cart away the corpse, they end up dropping it while using bed sheets like a sling. The body explodes. The stench remained in his pores for days, and he probably never felt clean again after that. Drug addict stillbirth. Here's a similar situation. Another extremely dark Ask Reddit thread, this one started by user ThunderPhoenix21 on April 10th, 2020. User Luthus33, who wasn't quite a detective yet but was on night patrol in a violent neighborhood, gets a call to an after-hours bar, one that he was familiar with, referring to it as the Star Wars Cantina because of incidents like them stopping a rape in progress. They start clearing this bar. I guess because it's closing time and the drunk patrons weren't leaving quietly, when Thunder Phoenix 21's female partner goes to the women's room. It's occupied and the woman inside is refusing to leave at first. When she does leave, they notice a weird bulge in the woman's pants. They search her, expecting to find drugs, only to be greeted by a baby's arm. The woman had apparently been drinking and smoking crack and perhaps didn't even notice or didn't care that she was having a stillbirth and just kept indulging in her vices. Paramedics arrived and had her push it out and into the toilet. Drugs don't just waste your money. They can leave one broken and everyone around them traumatized. I was breastfed until 15. Breastfeeding is a perfectly natural occurrence that should not be shamed. That being said, I'm sure most of us stopped breastfeeding before we were old enough to remember doing so. Additionally, perhaps you have heard plenty of anecdotes of women continuing to breastfeed past infancy. There definitely comes a point where it goes from something innocent to sexual abuse. The saga begins with a 2013 post on the Cringe Pics subreddit of another possibly fake magazine article where a woman is seen breastfeeding her 13-year-old son. I couldn't find the source of this magazine article either. It's likely fake. Hopefully fake. Anyhow, a now deleted user comments on the post that she was breastfed until she was 15. After getting a lot of questions on this comment thread, she decides to open up an AMA post on the Casual IMA subreddit. From her replies to the comments, we see that she viewed it as a normal mother-daughter relationship. However, considering all the details, this was a clear case of SA. In an update to the post made 6 years after the original thread, OP noted that she's come to terms with the facts, saying this was part of a broader sexual abuse and an inappropriate relationship with my mother. I just wasn't ready to face it back then. When I made this post, I had no idea about the roller coaster I was about to embark on. She's since gone to therapy and moved far away from her mother. Interestingly, she claims she never received any hate messages, just support, thanking everyone before deleting her account to leave it all behind. A ruined first date. On January 1st, 2015, user Redditoro posted another Ask Reddit thread. What is the creepiest bone-chilling story you know that claims to be true? User Alicia TG parroted a now-deleted post from user Rubingham, who had commented a secondhand story that came from the parents of her friend on an older Ask Reddit thread. So, the parents of the friend of Rubingham had just met at the time of the story and were on their first date. It was going nicely. Her dad suggested to her mom that they take a hike in Provo Canyon, a popular ravine park in the state of Utah. They began walking down a normal path, but it was getting real dark real fast. For whatever reason, they kept on going beneath the dim light of the new moon before the man stepped on something really soft but large. They got freaked out about what they might have just stepped on, but couldn't see properly and hightailed it out of there. Years later, the two got married and were living a normal life when they were watching a TV interview with serial killer Ted Bundy. Bundy began telling his own story about a time he felt he was about to be caught in the act. He was dumping a body one cold, dark night in Provo Canyon when he heard some people approaching and decided to hide in the trees, leaving the body in the path. Bundy said he watched as some guy just walked straight into the body he left and just turned around as if nothing had happened and walked off. Now, if this is true, that is a nightmare scenario. Not only knowing how close to certain death those two would have been, no way Ted Bundy would have left witnesses, but knowing that you'd come in contact with a fresh body who'd just been violently taken from this world. Perhaps they both knew what they had encountered on some level, but didn't want to admit it to themselves until they saw that interview with America's most notorious serial killer. I do question the validity of the story, however. Besides coming from a secondhand source, we aren't able to find the news interview where Ted Bundy told the story he recounts in the thread. He was a well-documented individual too. I found some essays and articles that referenced this specific Reddit thread and the story from the perspective of the couple, but no actual transcript of Bundy telling this story. It's possible this supposed interview was really aired on TV and is just lost, but seems unlikely. It's also possible the couple never even stumbled across a body that evening and just made a connection to Ted Bundy through some false memories after seeing a news interview. It's still a very creepy tale, however, especially given its unseen antagonist. Coconut oil. This archived post originated on Just Know MIL, a subreddit for people to discuss and offer support for dealing with toxic and abusive mother-in-laws and mothers. The post was made by a throwaway account named Fuck Your Coconut. The OP is a woman and got married to her husband in 2002. They had a son and two twin girls. When they first brought those two twin girls home from the therapist, they found the older of the two was breaking out in rashes, and they assumed correctly they were allergic reactions. Problem was, they couldn't figure out what the allergen was. For months, they would bring their baby to the hospital over a reaction, and she would improve, but as soon as she was discharged, the rashes would start up again. Eventually, after moving in with her husband's parents and restructuring their routine entirely in order to figure out the allergen, they realized it was just coconut. They hadn't ever tested for coconut because it's an exceedingly rare allergen, at least according to the doctor in this story. OP noted that she came from a culture that used coconuts quite often, not just in food, but in rituals and hair products too. OP said that her mother often put coconut oil in her hair when she was a child, which she never liked because of how greasy it was. The family initially laughed this all off, even when the OP told her coconut-loving mother about this. They thought this was the end of the whole ordeal at first, until OP's mother returned to the picture. OP noted that her mother was very traditional and they disagreed on a lot of things. This wasn't that big a deal and the relationship was mostly amicable despite a few tensions around politics and religion. Where the mother got weird about things was with OP and her two daughters' hair. OP's daughters had very curly, textured hair, which OP's mother always insisted she try to straighten with some oil, which OP refused to do. On November 2nd, 2005, when OP and her husband were both busy with extra work, she decided to leave her kids at her mother's house. At 5 p.m., OP had a video chat with her three kids where she noted they were all happy and healthy. At 10:30 p.m., she talked on the phone with her mom without anything seeming wrong. The next morning, the OP and her husband drove to her mother's home to get the kids, only to find it was empty and that their son was at the neighbor's house and crying hysterically. The neighbors weren't sure what was happening, but said they saw an ambulance pulling out of the mother's home at 6 a.m. OP's father had dropped the kid off with the neighbors and vanished. At this point, there's no sign of the OP's parents or her twin girls. OP eventually figured out where the ambulance was headed and went to that hospital with her husband. When she found a nurse and explained the situation, asking for her parents and girls, the nurse looked ready to cry. It turned out that the OP's mother had used coconut oil in the oldest daughter's hair to straighten it the night before, knowing the full extent of the girl's allergy. She had simply given the daughter some Benadryl when she felt itchy and sent her to bed, her entire head being covered by a known allergen. OP described how it is believed her daughter had been too dreary from the medication to ask for help or move properly from bed and had died. Alone, in pain, terrified. The pain the family went through was immeasurable. OP explained that her father had no idea about the allergen and wound up leaving her mother because of this incident. Her other two children grew up healthy and happy, but were never quite the same, becoming more reserved and protective of each other. Somehow, OP's mother was not arrested over what was absolutely negligent homicide, but the entire family stopped associating with her. Occasionally, OP's mother will call her to beg for forgiveness. To this, OP will only ever respond, "You can come see me when you bring my daughter with you." Missing friend. RBI, the Reddit Bureau of Investigation, is a testament to the power of the internet. It's a subreddit where amateur and professional sleuths gather in order to try and solve, or at least bring light to, real-world crimes and mysteries. Oftentimes, however, the subreddit just displays the horrifying incompetence and corruption from police forces, mostly in the US. Here's one of those times. In January 2022, the skeletal remains of Kyle Donovan, aged 31, were discovered in Kansas City by a transportation crew. He went missing in January 2020. The Reddit post in question comes from a friend of Kyle. User DefLemon posted on February 16, 2024. The post said that Kyle had called 911 shortly before his death. Some of the 911 call was made public in a news report from Fox, linked in the post. In it, Kyle calmly, yet urgently informs the operator of his location, indicating that he'd been attacked and that he felt his life was in danger, while very clearly informing the operator of the location that he would later be found dead in. The police never told the search parties looking for Kyle of this 911 call. The police never went by the location. They never responded to his call for help. Kyle could have lived had KCPD just done their jobs. To this day, the case of Kyle Chase Donovan remains cold. It's worth noting Kyle may have had schizophrenia, but OP, DefLemon, still seems to suspect he was a victim of foul play, given it sounds like there are other voices on the haunting 911 call. Whatever the case, we can place some blame on the people who took an oath to protect and serve, yet somehow failed to so much as check on a young man who was scared for his life. In the comments of the thread, you'll find that the going theory to explain the lack of response was that the police or operator wanted to avoid violence. In the call, Kyle calls his situation a war zone, and perhaps the police didn't want to get into a shootout. Instead, they left him for dead, another victim of a failing system that often neither protects nor serves. If any Kansas City locals happen to have any information about the incident, it would be best for you to reach out to DefLemon directly. Maxwell Hill. It's time for us to hone in on one of the biggest conspiracies of our time. You know who Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell are. You probably know the most public aspects of their crimes. What you may not know is that, strangely enough, it seems that Ghislaine Maxwell was one of the most active users on Reddit. Maxwell Hill has a nearly 15 million post karma and was posting on the site from 2006 all the way to the arrest of Ghislaine Maxwell in July 2020. The account has remained inactive, so all the, albeit circumstantial, evidence points to this being Ghislaine. Sufficient to say, there's more to the Epstein-Maxwell case than what is reported. Between Epstein and some of his victims' suspicious deaths, and a disappointing lack of arrests in the years following Ghislaine's, it's a horrifying rabbit hole that could drive you mad just looking into. Right now, you can go have a look at a seemingly normal Reddit account that most likely belongs to a monster. Though the account is inactive, Maxwell Hill is currently still listed as a moderator of 5 large subreddits: World News, Environment, Bad Cop No Donut, a subreddit documenting police corruption, Enviro Action, and Greed. She was often posting news articles to politics and tech subreddits and would engage in passionate debates in comments. Most disturbing is the knowledge that someone who sold kidnapped women and children to the upper 1% was blatantly controlling the means in which a lot of people got their news. Off-putting as well was the collective shrug that the media has made towards this story. Flip and Flop. In 2017, a Reddit user, Flip and Flop, posted on the subreddit Drugs. "Hi guys, I finally got some Datura to try out. I'm free tomorrow and I have the house to myself, so I'm really excited to try the effects of this interesting plant." Quickly, comments came and flooded, many sharing their own experiences and trying their best to steer OP away from the drug. One user wrote, "I never noticed too many effects initially. Dry eyes and mouth, hot flushed skin, rapid heartbeat, but I was 100% in a state of psychosis that whole time, and for about 2 weeks after I stopped using it. Like someone here said, it's a deliriant, so I wasn't even aware of how totally fucked I was. My friends got increasingly worried about me, and I finally broke down mentally. About a month later, I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and severe panic disorder with derealization and depersonalization. But the general consensus was, do not take any, and if he did, to keep them updated. Yeah, it's been 3 hours. I think he's fucked. I hope this is a shitpost. Good luck and report back, please." Before moving on, a basic view on what Datura is. Datura is a part of the nightshade family, containing deliriants and poisons. The danger comes from the chemicals naturally produced, those being tropane alkaloids that include atropine, scopolamine, and hyoscyamine. Each of those can have a different and unpredictable effect on the body. Common symptoms are delirium, dry mouth, and dilated pupils, and more severe ones would be Datura hallucinations and seizures. Here's a common update on the same post. "I've decided that I'll be sipping on the tea and slowly smoking the leaves until I feel that the effect is strong enough." Update number 2, an hour later on the same post. Edit, "Slowly drank the tea in half an hour and it didn't taste too bad. Not feeling much yet, I'll check back in an hour or so." After that, he disappeared only to appear in a comment where the effects were clearly taking effect. Under a video covering this, a supposed friend had mentioned that Flip and Flop was indeed alive, yet was too embarrassed to update back on Reddit. Jake 3572. On August 12, 2021, Plymouth, England resident Jake Davison would shoot 5 people dead. His mother, himself, Maxine Davidson, 3-year-old Sophie Martin, and her father, Lee Martin, 59-year-old Stephen Washington, and 66-year-old Kate Shepard. Perhaps the most tragic aspect of this was that the warning signs of Jake's mental state were made as plain as day on his Reddit account and YouTube channel. His YouTube was covered extensively in news reportings of the tragedy, especially his final video just before he would murder his mother. His Reddit account, though it is now banned, has been extensively archived. If you want to take a more in-depth look than just screenshots, you can access his account directly through the Wayback Machine. It's all there for you to see. Jake was extremely active in incel subreddits, such as Ugly Uncensored and Incels in Action. Most apparent were his insecurities, whether it's lamenting getting no likes on social media posts, or just posting his own pictures to Am I Ugly? Brutally Honest. He apparently had a real crab-in-a-bucket mentality in his rambling search for like-minded people. Guys who lost their virginity in life 20+, does it still bother you? Do you look back with regret? Does it affect you mentally, emotionally, perhaps even physically to this day? Or are you over that now? Are you genuinely happy and content with life despite never having sex in your teen years? Or did the mental scars carry with you for the rest of your life? A very strange post to make in the incel subreddit, considering their whole deal is being virgins. This implies he actually did lose his virginity, but is somehow still insecure about the fact that it happened in his 20s. I think we can all agree it isn't weird to not be having sex until you're college-aged. Rampant insecurity seems to be the real deciding factor in this guy's life. It doesn't matter how good you have it if you don't think you have it good. He's not even particularly unusual looking. Not to judge anyone by their looks or to compliment a mass murderer, but this very much resembles an Elliot Rodgers situation. Jake's lack of success with women was his own doing. In one comment, he chalks up his failure with the opposite sex to mental blocks, and noting that he had women interested in him in college, but didn't feel the motivation to make moves, while also referring to females over the age of 40 as saggy old women. Then came his right-wing extremism and more sexist views. They come in mild, subtle red flags, like referring to the movie Gattaca as red-pilled and a brutal misunderstanding, or saying that therapy is for women, which managed to get him downvoted in an incel subreddit. Even they hated it. Perhaps his most disturbing Reddit post in context, however, was one comment he left under a thread in Incel Exit. To the question of, what do incels think of their mother? Jake answered quite simply that he can't stand her. He also had plenty of normal human interactions during his time on Reddit, however. In fact, his final post before committing the murders wasn't like his YouTube video. It wasn't a threat or deranged rant. He was just asking about a meteor shower in a space subreddit. Can you see this with the naked eye? Fantastic. I would love to go out camping in the mountains somewhere. Overall, Jake was a depressed, mentally ill individual who took on views that filled him with a quiet rage. He wasn't outwardly a threat, but if you read between the lines of his posts, the signs that he would do something drastic were, and are, still there for anyone to see. Philosophy of Rape. Philosophy of Rape was a subreddit that was banned soon after its creation, the reason given being inciting harm against others. Yeah, shocker. Unlike the earlier mentioned rape confessions and its associated kink subs, this sub was not just a fetish board. The limited information available about the subreddit suggests that it was made as a means of promoting SA to keep women submissive in modern society. A lot of the discussion around the page seems to suggest that the sub was very small and the posts were mostly downvoted by outsiders looking in. The sub's creator and moderators were genuine proponents of these ideals, however, and it is quite disturbing to know that someone managed to publicly foster a community to promote them right here on the surface web. There were several moderators to the subreddit. Wherever these creators are now, we don't know, but they're probably just walking among us, maybe going home and spreading evil ideologies in more closed circles online. One moderator, the Swar, still has an open account and appears to be Russian, but that's just about all we can say about these people, besides what they told us in their own words. I really want to essay Jill. It would be wrong though, because she's my best friend's girl, and I just don't think I could do that to him. Clear violation of the bro code. Even if he dumps her someday, it'd still be a no-go. However, if she dumps him, then it's on, right? The rest of this is just vile, so let's just move on. Daryl Pratt. Parasocial is a word that gets thrown around a lot lately, but that isn't to say it's lost its meaning. As social media becomes the default mode for art and entertainment distribution, the wall between fans and celebrities starts to look more like a one-way mirror. This can be a special problem for minor celebrities that may rely heavily on fan interaction. This goes extra for women. Reddit user Daryl Pratt was a physical embodiment of these problems with internet celebrities. His account has now been banned, but if you take a close look at his activity on the Wayback Machine, you'll find a disturbing story of obsession. The account's very first post, made Monday, May 2nd, 2016, read, "Can I get in trouble for sending a girl love letters?" Generally, if you need to ask if you can get in trouble for something like this, the answer is yes. Many of the commenters pointed this out, while suggesting Daryl get some mental health counseling. Daryl continued with posts like this that just got creepier as they went along. "I'm an 18-year-old male and need help getting a 26-year-old girl on the internet to like me. Please help. I'm desperate." Redditors would continue to implore him to seek help and quit stalking this poor girl. Daryl would always get defensive, whether he was claiming he just wants to be friends before contradicting himself by declaring his love for the girl, or claiming that this girl, who blocked him on all social medias, was the one hurting him instead. If you suspect this person may have been a troll, well, he wasn't, because we know who his victim is. You may know Elena Pierce, a YouTuber, director, writer, game developer, actor, podcaster, and a perfect target for an internet stalker. At the time, Elena was mostly known for her gaming channel and her involvement with IGN and Rooster Teeth. She was no stranger to internet harassment, but this guy was such a problem, she had to make a video addressing the circumstances. He really was sending her love letters and making unwarranted comments on her appearance under her videos, albeit under the name Bruce Wayne. She eventually blocked him from all social media, which triggered his Reddit posting spree. The saga of Daryl Pratt fortunately didn't end in violence, but it did continue from here. While he eventually seemed to just stop harassing Elena, at least under the Bruce Wayne name, Daryl would appear later in an Ask Reddit thread when someone mentioned his username as one of the creepiest things they ever saw. He continued to defend his behavior. Yeah, I defend myself because I didn't do anything wrong. She is the one that's hurting me. I was only supporting her, and no one on Reddit has helped me with ideas on how to get her back. I feel like I'm the only decent person left on the planet. His last two comments were especially concerning. I'll most likely be dead tonight, so that should make her extremely happy. Fuck this world. Now, this is a common tactic for abusers and manipulators, but Daryl might have been serious about his intentions here. You see, another account was made under the username Daryl Prater V2, which would begin asking if one could get in trouble for hugging a girl that doesn't want to be hugged. Now, people reasonably assumed this was a troll impersonating Daryl, and it still may be, especially given the different spelling of his name, but his speech pattern did seem to line up with the original account, and his explanation that he was avoiding harassment on that account does hold up. Another account was brought to the world's attention by Nexpo, who has an in-depth video on this situation from 2019. This account was labeled Daryl Prater V4 and was asking about ending it. To their credit, Redditors were pleading with him to not go through with it. This would be the last time Reddit heard the name Daryl Prater. Though, in his video on this topic, Nexpo did a little more digging beyond this and discovered a few other accounts on other sites that may have belonged to Daryl. Nexpo concluded that it at least appeared Daryl got the mental health counseling he needed and was able to move on from Elena and start a new life, which is for the best. Mental illness is not pretty, and it makes people do awful things. But that doesn't mean everyone is beyond healing, and Daryl may have gotten his second chance. Hopefully that's the case. We know for certain Elena is also doing well too. She's pursuing acting and broadcasting, having just made her big screen debut in VHS Beyond, among other cool projects. Carl H. Carl Harold, or Carl H on Reddit, was one of the early adopters of the site and ran a subreddit called Carl H Programming with the aim of teaching new coders the business. Carl H was a beloved figure on Reddit and later YouTube for a long time, even once being named Redditor of the Day in 2012. In late 2013, Carl suddenly vanished off the site. People probably thought they were fearing the worst when they suspected he died. In fact, they hadn't thought of the worst, as Carl had been arrested for sexual assault, production of CP, and abduction of his own 9-year-old boy. 2 years of subjecting his own son to irreparable physical and mental torture, all while convincing the world he was a computer saint. Carl later ended it in his jail cell before being charged with anything. A hacker later logged into his account pretending to be him, but that was just that, a hacker, a troll. The real Carl H's words are still archived by the Wayback Machine and other screenshots throughout the web. It's disturbing to scroll through his account and read caring, considerate comments he left throughout Reddit while knowing that they came from someone who committed just about the worst possible crime. Was it all a front, or did he truly believe he was a good man? Either way, it's clear we may never truly know a person's dark side until they decide to show it. Spontaneous H. We hear a lot about people in the middle of drug addiction, right in the deep end. A lot of you probably often wonder, though, why did you choose to take the drug in the first place? Obviously, the answer may vary, but I'd bet it's often just pure curiosity getting the better of people. Case in point, in September 2009, user Spontaneous H made a post on the IMA subreddit. I did heroin yesterday. I am not a drug user and have never done anything besides pop back when I was a teen. AMA. He was walking around this fine day when someone in Washington Square Park asked if he wanted some drugs. Spontaneous H claimed he said yes because life has been pretty boring the last few years and I feel like I haven't really lived, taken any risks, or done anything crazy, so I figured, what the hell, maybe I'll buy some pot. But he doesn't end up buying pot from this guy. When the dealer mentions that he's got some heroin, Spontaneous H thinks back to depictions of the drug in The Wire of all things and gets curious. So he buys some of that. Alright, if you want to do heroin because of The Wire, you're just straight up nuts. That's like traveling to the Arctic because you saw The Thing. He talks about how much he loved doing it, but says he will definitely never do it again, and gets real defensive when people tell him how stupid he's being. Edit. Please, no more comments telling me I'm going to be a homeless addict dying of an overdose now. Don't lecture me with all of your misconceptions and lack of any real knowledge or experience about the drug. I understand if you know someone who has been hurt by it. We all do. Any drug can ruin lives. Please ask me questions instead of trying to lecture me and do some research first before spewing lies. However, just 2 weeks later, he posted another AMA admitting he had continued using heroin. Though he initially claimed he wasn't addicted, it became clear he was spiraling quickly. He alternated between saying he didn't need any help and then admitting he did, frequently downplaying his addiction while continuing to post updates. He became defensive, combatant with commenters, and tried to prove he was a real addict by posting photos of his gear. He would respond to a comment months later about his rehabilitation and his supporting family. So it seems things are on the upswing, though he wouldn't post again until 7 months later, October 2010. I am a patient in a psychiatric hospital. I was also technically dead last week. AMA. Still committed to the AMA thing. In this AMA, he reveals how much of an unreliable narrator he's truly been. He wasn't in fact clean when he made that original post. He says he's lost thousands of his and his family's savings, nearly died 3 times, had a threesome on speed, and messed up the relationships with the girls. Who even knows what's real at this point though? The guy is clearly not well. His next post was 2 days later. In it, he says he's on his way to a rehab facility after being Narcaned just a week ago. He accepts that he was stupid, and this is the last post until an update 7 years later, this time to the Opiates Recovery Board. Thankfully, as of the post, he was 6 years clean. Still, the rapid downward spiral the user took was something to behold. One of the commenters named Latte noted that Spontaneous H's original post about heroin actually inspired to go out and try it. This could have very easily ended horribly, case in point. Tired of people faking, too. After about a year of flexing photos of Benadryl purchases and commenting about his experiences, on September 22, 2020, the user posted this to a subreddit called I Love DPH, nearly 7,000 milligrams. It's unclear what exactly the agreed upon lethal dose is, but you shouldn't be taking 276 pills of anything. Unfortunately, and unsurprisingly, this was Tired of People Faking 2's last post nearly 5 years ago. Speaking of, it got 258 upvotes before being deleted, and the sub is still open, albeit restricted. It's just disgusting that these people basically encouraged this guy to do this and just went on with their days without consequence. Scrolling through I Loved PH, a lot of these people's language and behavior is honestly really cringy. Will that encourage you not to do drugs? You don't want to be cringe after all. Look at this description. This is the one and only official DPH lovers secret club. It is so cute and so fun. Dedicated to all low-dose deefers and low-dose deefing enthusiasts. What the fuck does any of this mean? This place is for dank memes, stupid polls, shitposts, DPH art, tips and tricks, DPH fun, love, praise, and glory. All posts and comments must await approval. We do not recommend DPH abuse in any form. Be responsible, okay? Ooh. The Whistler. Back to Ask Reddit. December 2015, a deleted user asks, what is the creepiest thing that has ever actually happened to you? Bing Bong 1234 had an answer. When he was just 8, he was taking a walk with his mom and his dog in Lansing, Michigan. They began hearing a man whistling. Nothing unusual, but it is a very distinct whistling tune that moves from high to low at a consistent rate. It freaks out his mom for some reason, and she rushes them both away. 2 years later, he was taking that same dog out to his yard when from a nearby bush, what did he hear? That distinctive whistling sound. Now, even if he hadn't heard it before, that would be scary, so he hurried inside. Years go by, and he sort of forgets about it until one 4th of July when he's moved to South Dakota and is hanging with his girlfriend by a lake, watching fireworks. Notably, a dog is nearby just like both previous episodes, belonging to another family, when Bing Bong spots a man in a canoe about 20 meters away. What does this man do? He whistles. What Bing Bong 1234 claims to be the exact same whistle. He shouted at the man, asking who he was, and got no response as he just canoed away. He even attached a video link to the comment that he'd taken of the canoeing man, as he rose far, far away, his whistling carrying over the water. A creepy story for sure, but are we sure he didn't just hear a guy whistling and confirmation bias connected it to his past experiences of whistling? What are the odds this whistler followed him to another state? The way the whistling sound travels over the lake can be easily explained. Motionless water tends to carry sound. If this story is real, it's still unlikely there's anything paranormal or sinister going on. Besides maybe the bush part. That's weird. Weak Sand 9779. On March 21st, 2023, now banned user WeakSand9779 made a post on the AMA subreddit, boldly stating that for the past 21 years or so, she's had an electric chair fetish. It's unclear why she was suspended, but a lot of her posts centered around the electric chair. Since it is an uncommon fetish, the only real community she ever seemed to find was from when she made a post asking for other people's unusual fetish and found one person who also wants to be thrown into death row and fried. She shares a scene from a movie that may have inspired her fetish, going to show that there's no telling what watching the wrong, or right, thing at a developmental age can do to your bedroom habits. In a post to Self, she says, "If I found out that my boyfriend was a warden who executed people in the electric chair, I'd legit propose to him on the spot. I, 30F, love the electric chair so much since I was a young girl. All started after I stayed up late and ended up watching a movie about Ted Bundy. Grew to hate serial killers and love the chair." It seems she sees the electric chair and anyone who operates it as this masculine symbol of justice and protection, also having the fantasy of being thrown in there herself. This post continues personifying electric chairs, as people with fetishes often do to the object of their desire. I love Old Sparky, the original one in Sing Sing. I think he's cute. The one in Tennessee, built by Fred Leuchter, has to be my favorite though. Looks so intimidating and kind of futuristic, more high-tech compared to the older ones. This fetish is really specific. It has to specifically involve an actual electric chair at an actual prison. I'd imagine we then make out on the electric chair during the prison's after hours. In a very lengthy comment that we won't read all of, you can see how her own ideal execution will go, where a psycho prison warden mistakes her for a criminal. There also seems to be a humiliation element going on with her posting habits, as she would constantly draw attention to her unusual fetish and ask what people thought of it. She might be getting off to us making this segment on her right now for all we know. Incest isn't wrong. Incest isn't wrong is a sub for people arguing in support of familial sexual relationships. As the description says, a safer work community for support, positivity, and awareness regarding consanguinamori or consensual incest between adults. We support the acceptance and legalization of consensual incestuous relationships, and we stand against abuse in all forms. Please read the rules and the FAQ. One of the big problems is that despite that claim of being against abuse, it seems that what they classify as abuse gets muddy real fast. Here's a recent post as an example. Tired of this stigma. 29F, my father and I were very heavily involved until he passed away. I have tried dating since I lost him, and either I get a guy who was far against what we did, they bash my late father and me into the dirt, or the guy finds out and starts wanting every little detail so he can get off to it. I don't mind sharing, but fuck, I'm not just a book of porn stories to be flipped through. It makes finding an older man who will daddy me impossible. I lost my father and have been left with an empty void in my soul. It's killing me that I'm both scared to put myself out there again and a desperate need to have a daddy. Sorry for the rant, just hate being alone emotionally. Edit. If anyone knows of a dating site that's friendly to this, let me know please. This user also seems to be a fan of the DDLG kink, unsurprisingly. Anyhow, this subreddit clearly being alright with pedophilic grooming is just the cherry on top. It's chock full of people claiming to be in or longing for May-December parent-child relationships. It can also be darkly humorous though, like this one guy complaining about incest phobia in Red Dead Redemption 2. Dude, do you have any real problems? Worthless319. A 2017 Reddit thread asked users how they find hope. User Worthless319 commented on the thread that he found hope with an unusual method. I cut off my thing, cooked it a little, and ate it, with 54 upvotes. You might have laughed at the absurdity of the response. It sounds like a bizarre joke that's perfectly in line with 2017 edgy humor when Joji was called Filthy Frank. However, the day before, he had posted 2 threads in morbid questions, and they were morbid questions indeed. In a now-deleted comment thread from the very same day, he had this to say, I shot it off for good. Immediately after, I cooked it, and ate it and listened to music before calling an ambulance. He has other posts implying that this self-mutilation is some sort of penance for failing God. I'm pretty sure the whole self-mutilation thing is against the Bible too, so that's a double fail. Throughout this whole affair, he also described in a deleted comment, with screenshots floating around, what his mutilated thing looks like. However, it doesn't seem he ever posted any evidence he actually did the mutilation, and throughout the day of October 7th, 2017, when he supposedly did it, he would continue to make normal posts and comment about video games, his dog, and most notably, drugs. Perhaps this was a bizarre, attention-seeking delusion of a guy who took too much, or the fact that he took too much tamped his judgment down and he was able to just keep posting on Reddit while bleeding, or he got loaded into that ambulance just fine and kept scrolling through Reddit. Either way, the account is still open, even though some of his posts are deleted, and you can go scroll through it to try and puzzle out what was going on in this guy's head. October 17th, 2017 was the last day he was active on Reddit, so we're without any updates to the story. Cyprol. In February of 2021, a now-deleted post from a now-deleted subreddit went semi-viral from a now-deleted user, Cyprol. For whatever reason, there doesn't seem to be a full copy of the post in plain text, but some YouTube videos have partial screenshots of it, and there's plenty of secondhand info from people who beheld the post for themselves. Basically, Reddit user Cyprol had got a new motorcycle helmet and found that it didn't fit, and for some reason, blamed this fact on her chubby cheeks. So instead of just, buying another helmet, she decides that buccal fat removal would be best. Buccal fat is the fat stored in the lower cheek that tends to naturally burn as one ages. It's a popular cosmetic procedure to have this fat layer removed, especially among young women, as some people seem to think it gives them a more refined, less childish look. It's a very controversial procedure, however, and whenever it seems like a celebrity has gotten it, there's always a firestorm. Because of the controversy, I wonder if the motorcycle helmet thing was just an excuse Cyprol jumped up to avoid looking vain. It doesn't really make sense for a little fat in your cheeks to keep you from putting on a motorcycle helmet, but I digress. Cyprol wants this procedure, but she doesn't intend to pay for it. Cyprol, noting that a lot of the doctors hawking this procedure called it simple, easy, and fast, figures she may as well operate on herself, somehow not realizing that it is quick and easy for licensed surgeons, not the general public. She decides she can do facial surgery from a few quick YouTube videos describing it, and gets to work with a knife and a frozen TV dinner for numbing the pain. In the description of the procedure, she noted that the sensation was not unlike pulling a tooth just from the inside of her cheek. It took over an hour to get one fat pad out. Then she supplied, with the original post, a graphic photo of her mutilated fat pad, which she claims she then cooked and ate. She cooked and ate it. Sure, why not? Why the fuck not? She later claimed she did the extraction to her other cheek a bit later, not content with humiliating herself once, and this was apparently when the post got deleted, according to Reddit user JonahBoy33. The mods of the multiple subreddits she was posting to didn't want any impressionable teens to try this on themselves. Flooding in my mind. This user is just tragic. Flooding in my mind appears to be a young woman. Her first post on Reddit was on March 8, 2017, to the self-harm subreddit, pleading for help. The users were supportive, and she later said she was able to stop for the time being. But the thing is that it's a compulsion that can be addicting. Throughout the next year, Flooding in My Mind would post on various subreddits. Some of her posts and comments were about music, movies, and spiritualism. Unfortunately, a lot of her posts were also about drug use and self-harm. She was extremely active in self-harm and a mental illness support group subreddit called Made of Styrofoam. In October of 2017, she began posting photos of her scars. On Monday, May 7th, 2018, she made a post to the Off My Chest subreddit. The office just saved my life. In the post, she described how the theme song stopped her, and she thanked the team which created The Office. This really shows that she probably didn't truly want to die at the time. She just wanted to feel happy. But whatever pain she was going through was demonstrably making it very difficult to keep going. Flooding in My Mind's final post was made to Made of Styrofoam. Attached is a picture of a banner that reads, "Is today the day?" A commenter on this post asking if she is okay also references a post to a blood fetish subreddit, but it seems this post has been lost. This, unfortunately, doesn't bode well for the user. There's been no activity on the account since this post on May 18th, 2018. We can only hope that the user left Reddit to get help. With a lack of updates, we can't say anything for certain, but the final post is ominous enough to suggest the worst. Ask a Rapist. One of the most infamous threads in Reddit history that has since been deleted but had a massive impact not just on Reddit but on the field of psychology and probably the whole world. It was made in July 26, 2012 and asked, Reddit's had a few threads about sexual assault victims, but are there any Redditors from the other side of the story? What were your motivations? Do you regret it? It was deleted by moderators about a year after its initial upload date. Some people were proponents of the thread and protested it being deleted. As one commenter notes on Museum of Reddit, The worst thing you can do is censor it. You can't tell people that something is bad. You have to show them both sides so that they may have a full understanding of why the subject is so horrible. This post was one of the most valuable and insightful things I've seen on Reddit and leads to a better understanding of the mechanisms of rape and rape culture. Indeed, some people did get a use of this thread. According to a Slate article by Nora Kaplan-Bricker, the first 68 comments of this thread, where rapists explained their motivation, became the subject of a research study. The researchers were able to break these comments down into different categories: victim blaming, objectification, biological essentialism, and hostility towards women. People who were against the whole idea of a rapist AMA thread were very much justified in their feelings. Some guys described planning it and not showing an ounce of remorse. The thread was deleted, yes, but you can find plenty of responses out there in the various archives. As one person said, it's sort of like looking at a Holocaust museum. It's an unpleasant experience, but it's helpful to confront what humanity is capable of. It's probably best not to directly interact with most of these people, however. Throw QWERTY away. On Monday, April 12, 2013, user Oh Gosh Where to Begin posted to ask Reddit, "Throwaway time. What's your secret that could literally ruin your life if it came out?" I love the exclamation. Tell a bunch of strangers your deepest, darkest secret, pretty please. Throwaway account Throw QWERTY Away probably had the most disturbing answer. They told a story of how when he was 10 or 11, living in an affluent household, he had a maid with a 13, 14-year-old daughter. The user said they would often watch their dog lick itself, and based on that, they proposed something to the maid's daughter that's too inappropriate to repeat on YouTube. The experience was so traumatizing that, according to the story, the girl ended it weeks later. As some people noted in the comments, this does sound kind of made up, so let's just run with that theory. Never get a nose job. On July 21st, 2021, a now archived thread read the following: Tifu by getting empty nose syndrome after a simple turbinate reduction. Please make my life story matter by upvoting and spreading turbinate organ awareness. The turbinates are an organ in the nose, which can become enlarged when inflamed or infected. Turbinate reduction is a routine procedure that usually happens real fast and can be done while the patient is awake. However, if just a little too much of them are removed, this can have devastating consequences known as empty nose syndrome. As the OP notes, the syndrome has stopped the brain from detecting air entering the nose, so it activates the choking response, even though she is still breathing. She now feels as though she is being strangled and waterboarded constantly, and is unable to sleep, and has had her life turned upside down. The user made a follow-up post, noting that she was still alive and that some helpful Reddit users had gotten into contact with a research facility that may be able to help her restore her turbinates using stem cell therapy. Unfortunately, because she lives in the US, she'll need to raise $4 million. Some commenters noted that she could probably get the money from a malpractice suit against the doctor that damaged her turbinates in the first place. The Reddit account has been deleted and these posts archived, so let's hope that's exactly what happened and she was able to recover. A routine surgery shouldn't have to mean death for a young woman. Better hoagie down. This one is weird, but it sort of resolves itself in the end, so buckle in. On January 7th, 2016, throwaway user Wife Going Crazy posted a story about, well, his wife going crazy. He claimed he believed his wife was gaslighting him. According to him, she got sick for a week, and although he had a business trip coming up, he was free during that time. So they decide to binge Battlestar Galactica together, as OP's in-laws had given them a DVD set of the whole show. They finish the show and end up having a bit of an argument, as his wife got mad at him for liking the finale when she didn't. Apparently, it's a really divisive episode among fans of the show, and his wife might just have been agitated, as she was sick and just got real disappointed by a lackluster ending. OP left for his trip, and she later apologized via text for being so weird, and he just chalked it up to her sickness. However, when OP came home, his wife began behaving even more bizarre. On his first day of work back, his wife handed OP a brown bag of lunch and said to him, "It's cold out there, better hoagie down," before slamming herself in the bathroom and locking the door. OP is confused, but initially assumes it's a weird joke or meme reference. His wife had a sort of straight-faced, memey sense of humor and liked to confuse OP with weird lies and bizarre phrases. It was usually in good fun, but she continued doing this every single day, even when OP yelled at her and demanded she stop. "It's cold out there, better hoagie down," slam herself in the bathroom, refuse to come out. She later denies she does this and acts like OP is crazy. OP assumes she's gaslighting him, and the comments echo this, and while also questioning his wife's mental state. OP claims he showed her a video of her doing this, and she completely disregarded it, calling it cute and moving on. So yeah, really weird. What does better hoagie down mean? I did say this has a conclusion, but it doesn't offer an explanation to the weird quote. One night, OP realized his wife was gone and found a bag with the phrase written on it in his kitchen. Enraged, he took a photo of the bag and drove to his in-laws' house. He gets there, only for his father-in-law to answer the door and very gently show OP that it was actually his mental state that needed to be questioned. Turns out, OP's wife had been gone for 2 days without him knowing, and all the better hoagie down interactions had been hallucinations. He knew this because his father had video evidence from his wife, who showed OP slamming on the bathroom door asking for his wife to come out, while she clearly filmed him from behind the couch. OP also realized the photos of the better hoagie down bag that he took didn't actually have the bag at all. OP suspected the hallucinations may have been brought on by using too much Benadryl to fight against the allergies he had to his wife's cat. And that's where he ends his post. So, another reminder to be careful about DPH. This is a weird conclusion, and it's unsettling to think of how easily our reality can be manipulated by accident without us realizing. But at least it seems everything is going to be alright in this instance. OP's best friend became a monster. The gimmick of the Let's Not Meet subreddit is that it's the opposite of a missed connections board, a place to post about people you've encountered once and don't wish to ever meet again. This time by user Bonky Dong from November 19th, 2020. My ex-best friend of 25 years? Let's not meet. The OP describes a man who he calls Mr. D, a high school teacher. He grew up within a few blocks of D, and both of them got along well for having similar nerdy interests, like their video games. They both went different paths, but clearly kept in touch and remained good friends. Mr. D went to a Christian college, got married, and found his job. Though his wife later asked for an open marriage, which Mr. D didn't take very well, but eventually agreed to. He later came out as bisexual and began having lots of flings, which he would describe in often uncomfortable detail to his friends. Mr. D then told OP and another friend that his wife believes pedophilia to be a valid sexual orientation and was harmless, which obviously was alarming, considering Mr. D is a high school teacher. They remained friends though. OP probably was hoping Mr. D didn't feel the same. One Halloween, OP has Mr. D and some friends over for some gaming and drinking. Mr. D went hard on the drinking and began bragging about having a relationship with a male student, sexually violating a dog, and spent the night sexually harassing people at the party and commenting lewd things about OP's sister until he passed out at 12:30. The next morning, he heard Mr. D masturbating loudly at 7 a.m. OP got Mr. D out and later contacted another former friend of theirs who implied Mr. D had sexually assaulted them and a female mutual. So, OP ends the post with this. So, Mr. D, let's never ever meet, not even in passing. I've known and loved you my entire life, but after all this, I have been massively cleaning my house, finding all kinds of random shit you've given me over the years, and either tossing, burning, or selling it. By the way you were talking, I'm sure you'll be in prison or dead soon, so I wish you a good farewell. It was nice knowing you, but our friendship, brotherhood, and time together is up. You traded a normal professional life for degeneracy, bestiality, borderline rapist, pedo lifestyle, and if you ever talk about my sister like that again, I'll beat your ass. No lies. I've been doing nothing but praying, I haven't prayed since middle school, and racing to delete every trace of you from my life since this incident. Is anyone we remember as children truly the same person they were then? Nothing brings me joy. Riri Drum Ladikamo, homicidal murderer backwards, claimed to be an artist in his 60s. Most of his activity on Reddit were posts to art forums that showed off his own and other people's drawings. Many of his posts that showed his art had the same caption. I am 59 years old, never married, rent a small room, and nothing brings me joy except my art. My best is far from good, since I have no one to share it with. Let me share it with you. The number would go up as he aged and continuously posted his art throughout the years. A lot of the comments were quite venomous, calling his apparent self-portrait art shitty and edgy while doubting the story he told in the captions, which is just unfortunate. Art is a natural means of expression and shouldn't be gatekept. Humans have made art for as long as they've had feelings. He wasn't the most skilled with a pen, but his art was uniquely his, and a lot of it is conceptually quite interesting. Sure, there's no concrete evidence his story was true, but the fact that he drew the same character, which was presumably himself, so often over the course of so many years, showing off almost 100 depressing pieces, it'd be a serious commitment to the bit if it wasn't real. The bullying and the apparently depressed mental state of the user is the most depressing part of this account. His account hasn't been active since April 20th, 2020. Here's the last piece he posted. At least the comments on this one are supportive and asking for an update to make sure he's still alive. Honestly, he probably still is, but just not posting his art because of the hate he'd been getting. Mess997. Another problem with drug use, besides just addiction, is that you never really know where the stuff you're snorting, crushing, or injecting comes from. On June 6, 2019, throwaway user Mess997 posted to the Confession subreddit, "I am responsible for the deaths of several people." Mesk had begun on dealing drugs on the dark web in order to fund his entrepreneurship ventures. He managed to put away a lot of savings and began dealing with higher-end and more dangerous substances. One day, Mesk997 received a message from a friend of his client that his drugs had killed the client. After checking the order logs, he realized that multiple people he had recently sold the drug online had not logged in for several days since receiving their order. Horrified, he realized he must have been high and accidentally gave them a more dangerous drug, which most likely led to all of them overdosing on what they thought was a simple psychedelic. He immediately shut down his drug trade. "I knew what happened. I knew I just killed several people. I sold the rest of my drugs, converted my Bitcoin to cash, and moved the fuck away. Didn't speak to anyone for weeks. Found a job in a restaurant, living in a city I always wanted to. I haven't touched drugs since that day. I haven't had anything to do with that life since then." The OP says he thinks of the people every day. He found obituaries for 4 of them online, confirming his fears. He now lives a reclusive, traumatized life, clocking in and out of work to come home and play video games while distancing himself from former friends. "I don't feel like I deserve to be alive. Am I really living anyway? I don't even know anymore. Maybe this will help me feel better." Lodger Throwaway 22. Lodger 22 posted to the Reddit Bureau of Investigation on February 27th, 2021. "Were people living in my attic?" He starts by saying, ominously, that the throwaway account is for his own safety. He prefaces that he lives in a dangerous area with his father and suffers from audio-visual hallucinations. He began hearing noises in their attic above his room in the morning, but shrugged it off as a bird for 2 to 3 months. One night, at around 3 a.m., he hears what sounds like footsteps from the ceiling and goes to get his father. Because of OP's mental issues, however, his father doesn't take him seriously at first and doesn't check the attic. A few weeks later, OP and his dad went out for about 4 hours, and when they returned, a few things were out of place. His bedroom was left closed when he recalled leaving it open out of habit. Some milk and meat were left on the counter, even though OP and his father don't recall pulling them out. OP's computer was also open to some food website he didn't remember accessing. They continued to brush these off as coincidences or forgetfulness. Both OP and his father continue hearing weird noises, and OP notices his dog seemed curious about the attic hatch at one point. One holiday, while his dad was gone, OP began noticing food going missing. OP asked a friend to come stay over and explained his suspicions. They decide to do an experiment and pretend to leave the house and hide in the living room. They begin hearing noises at the attic hatch as though it's being opened and decide to leave for their friend's house. Now that they were certain there was someone in the attic, OP called the police, but they didn't find anything. Though later, some neighbors report to OP seeing 2 people climbing over the back of their fence and fleeing, meaning they probably left before the cops got there. Squatters and frogs are not an uncommon occurrence in a country that's overwhelmed by homelessness. If someone really wants to be in your house, they'll get in. It's just good in this instance that no one was hurt. Colby. On April 9th, 2012, a shocking header was posted to Ask Reddit by Concerned Dad 1965. "I think my teenage son may have abused our dog. I'm not sure what to do. Help me, Reddit." After OP noticed strange, scared behavior in his dog Colby, he decided to take him to the vet. The vet found evidence the dog had been molested. There's a few suspects initially, but OP checked the computer of his only child and found he'd been on a bestiality forum, which pretty much confirmed who the culprit was. OP was distraught and came to Reddit for advice. OP took Reddit's advice and had a private talk with his teenage son, who admitted that he used a hairbrush. In the edit to the post, he noted he wasn't satisfied with his son's explanation as to why, but he was at least relieved that his son hadn't done it with the dog. OP thanked the subreddit for their help and promised an update. The update came a few months later in June. OP put his son in therapy, but didn't inform his mother why, just telling her he wanted to talk to somebody. However, he later caught his son grabbing the dog's genitals and grounded him. It's this incident that makes him decide to tell his wife the truth, and she is infuriated, mostly at OP though for keeping her in the dark. His son is also mad that he told her, so OP is between a rock and a hard place. The next update came in August. Things did not improve, though OP continued to receive support and advice from Reddit. His wife was still angry she'd been kept in the dark and had begun to think that OP was lying for some reason. She then began suspecting that OP was the one sodomizing the dog. This was a problem, especially considering she was blocking OP from finding another home for Colby where he'd be safe. His wife ended up moving out and, horrifyingly, taking the dog and her son with her. His son was still denying molesting the dog this whole time. Now, OP's life is in ruins, and the dog is not remotely safe. The next update would come in September. OP went to the house his wife was staying at and got into a shouting match with her, which ended with her loudly calling him a dog fucker, and OP stormed off. He caught his son watching from the window, and, as he put it, I stared at him and shook my head in disappointment, but he didn't change his expression. I have to admit, that really broke my heart and pissed me off. Suddenly, his wife changed her tune, and a few days later, she called him up sobbing. Colby, who had never bitten anyone before, had bitten their son in the abdomen badly enough to hospitalize him. They both knew what happened. OP calmly drove to his wife's house, the rage inside him stewing, before picking up the dog and having one more uncomfortable confrontation with his son. I know what you did. You can deny it and you can blame me all you want, but you and I both know what happened. I am taking the dog. And if I ever find out you go near an animal like this again, I will report you to the police. I don't care if you are my son. This is disgusting and unfair, and I raised you better. He had a short, weepy conversation with his wife where he was able to forgive her before bringing his dog to stay with him at a friend's house. A now deleted AMA from 2016 confirmed a few things. The OP divorced from his wife, and they don't speak much anymore. But he got remarried to a woman who came with another kid. Colby happily lived out the rest of his days before passing away peacefully in 2012. He doesn't want to share too much about his son, but he does say he's doing better. So, as Concerned Dad 1965 says, life is crazy, folks. Love your dogs, but not too much. 50-50. 50-50's tagline is, because choices matter. It makes a little visual game of Russian roulette. The basic premise is that anyone can post an image to the sub and tag it as a not safe for work, which makes the image blurred until you click the option to unblur it. The poster will title the post with two different possible options that the picture can be, one safe for work and one not safe for work. The not safe for work image won't be, say, a tasteful nude. It's usually a real gore image or something else similarly disgusting. The image should be so that the blur effect the not safe for work filter applies would make it difficult to tell if the post is the innocuous safe for work image or the gory not safe for work image in the title. Take, for example, this post that could be a beet salad or a mauled human face. If you're feeling like taking a risk or just morbidly curious, you could click the image to remove the blur. It's almost more disturbing to just stare at the blur, your imagination filling in the blanks as you wonder, could I be looking at a dead man? The appeal is probably a mixture of that morbid curiosity and the rush of not knowing whether you're about to be scarred for life. There's even the option to submit a true 50-50, sending in two images so that your post could be uploaded not safe for work or safe for work. It's a bit ghoulish though, isn't it? Many of the posters are using unsimulated images of real people who were tragically maimed or killed, or at least playing on the curiosity of seeing one of these things. It seems to be flying dangerously close to the sun. That being said, nowadays it seems to be more common to shitpost on the sub than to genuinely participate. Take this post with Freaky Goomba, for example. Penectomy 2. A penectomy is when male genitals get removed surgically. This sub is for people who, for whatever reason, desire a penectomy, and to share photos of the aftermath of their penectomy. They explicitly have a rule against dick pics. So, why? Did everyone here suffer an accident or disease? It's hard to tell. But it seems like I said, the sub is geared towards people who desire genital surgical removal. So why? Well, here's what a user has to say. A full penectomy performed in a clinical setting. Ideally, the surgeon would be an attractive woman. Prior to the surgery, she would explain everything in full detail. I picture her as a white woman in her mid-30s, shoulder-length brown hair, black-framed glasses, B-cup, athletic build, and she's single. I won't read any further, but you get the idea. It's a fetish. Jailbait. The 2010s were a very different time. There's no reason a subreddit that sexualized underage girls should be allowed on the site. Yet, for a long time, there was an open, active jailbait subreddit. It's hard to tell when exactly it started, but it's safe to assume it launched during the early days of Reddit. We're not going to actually go on the Wayback Machine to check the exact date, as it's probably not a good idea to have jailbait searched in one's browser history. This would not fly for a moment today, and the sub was eventually banned in 2011. But it apparently wasn't because of the content. Here's the statement released by Reddit admin Huey Priest on the decision to ban the subreddit. I banned the subreddit because of some of the mods who were added, and the specific situation that was created with them. Many of them had been repeatedly banned from Reddit for various reasons. The situation was out of control. I offered to unban jailbait if those mods were removed. VA, a mod, did not want that. I have made this offer again, but he feels, I think, that if he cannot add whatever mods he wants, then it should stay banned. I don't agree with him on that, but I understand his point. To be clear, this was not really about content. It was a very specific situation with a big Reddit with specific issues and a bunch of new mods with bad rap sheets. It was essentially my decision, and I did ask VA not to publish our conversation. In hindsight, it was not clear what I meant by this. My fault. I think we have proven to be pretty damn transparent and forthright over the years. This was a specific situation and involved specific individuals, which is why I'd rather not discuss it and argue about it publicly like I usually would. It's unclear what these moderators were banned previously for, but it must have been real bad. The people who ran jailbait would have argued that none of the photos of the minors were revealing enough to qualify as illegal. But that really shouldn't matter, as it was a forum made for people to lust after children. Could a subreddit get more depraved while still technically legal? Unfortunately, yes. Pics of dead kids. I mentioned this one in an earlier entry. It was exactly what it said on the tin. Reddit was kind of a Wild West for a very long time, and as you saw, there's still plenty of disturbing subs active today. This one was active up until its ban in 2017. Reddit began cracking down on violent content around October 2017. Reddit had long allowed controversial subs like pics of dead kids to survive and thrive, as they wanted the site to be seen as an arbiter of free speech. With Reddit reaffirming their rules against posting content that glorified violence and death, the community of people that liked posting pictures of dead children was finally banned. The earliest archive of this sub dates back to June 2010, and it's probably a little older than that. That's a lot of dead children plastered all over the internet for people to ogle at for God knows why. Free speech is important, but what the hell was the message of this subreddit? Chloe. You may have seen the humorous webcomics of Senior Greyfo. He's a digital artist who seems to be into anime and video games. Chloe is a sub where he is the only user allowed to make posts, but anyone can comment. It's centered around his original character, Chloe, but it's become a place for all of Senior Greyfo's anime-style character art. At first glance, it looks pretty ordinary for an art subreddit, and to some, it may still look this way. But there's something that needs to be called out here. A lot of the art and comments are sexual in nature, which wouldn't itself be an issue if a lot of the girls depicted didn't blatantly look like children. Lolita art is a big issue in otaku culture, not just on social media, but in a few anime and video games as well. But it seems like some people get away with it by not explicitly calling attention to the childlike features of their sexualized characters. We've heard the cliche of, oh, she's basically 1,000 years old in canon, even though she looks like a little girl. But what about someone just not acknowledging what they're doing? Perhaps not even realizing what they're doing. It's not a crime to like slim women or cute things. But someone needs to point out that Senior Greyfo's art on this sub is very problematic. Just look, or don't, at the proportions of these characters. Not to outright accuse Senior Greyfo of malicious intent, but it seems like he's leaning into childlike proportions for a lot of his characters on his public page. He also posts even more explicit art on his Patreon. Narada. Nowadays, you're probably not fazed when people use memes to talk about messed up or horrible things. The lines between dark humor, tone deafness, and detachment from reality are getting very, very thin on this World Wide Web. But that wasn't always the case. Nowadays, between that severed head in a Wendy's bathroom meme and other things like that, if someone confessed to a murder via the confession bear, then we'd all probably assume it was just a dark joke. There was a time when posting a meme that alluded to a potential real-life murder might actually have been cause for alarm, however. If you don't know, Confession Bear was an old meme from back when internet memes had impact font and felt more like standard jokes, and also lasted years. The idea behind Confession Bear was that you were to shamefully admit to a silly secret, such as, I altered a Wikipedia page to win an argument with my wife, or I'm 20 years old and still sleep with a baby blanket. These memes, while goofy, were usually meant to be sincere from the poster, so people reacted strongly when in April 2013, a user named Narado made a post to Advice Animals, that subreddit, that read the following: "My sister had an abusive meth addict boyfriend. I killed him with his own drugs while he was unconscious, and they ruled it an overdose. Within hours, he was doxxed and had taken down the post, but the damage was done." This confession, via an unusual medium, was investigated by Redditors, who went so far as to try and dox him, but nothing was conclusive, and Narado has since deleted his account after claiming it was a joke. So, what do you think? Was this a joke that was too ahead of its time? Or did Narado commit murder to protect his sister? Nerodis. User Nerodis only ever made a few posts and comments on Reddit during his year on the site. His activity was completely normal until December 29th, 2015, when he made his first post to the Depression subreddit. He posted, "I'm currently walking to the LA River. Until then, please share funny stories." One of the first replies, though heavily downvoted, was someone urging him to stay safe and think of his loved ones. He replied that thinking about those close to him was part of what brought him to this point, though he appreciated the comment and again asked for funny stories. He stopped replying before too long, editing the post to note that he'd reached his destination and that it was too cold to keep going. This was the last time the account was accessed. As one commenter pointed out, his last wish was that people be civil to each other. The post still remains up. Is the real life after Lyme? Lyme disease, if you don't know, is a dreadful illness usually transmitted by bacteria in tick bites. If you get bit by a tick, it's best you go to the doctor and check for the disease immediately. Getting the disease, however, does not have to be the end of the world. Medicine is constantly advancing, and there are treatments for it. It doesn't have to consume your life, even if it did for this user. It seems like the account was deleted in 2019, but its activity paints a disturbing tale. On August 6, 2015, she posted to the Lyme subreddit that Lyme disease has taken a huge toll on her mental health. I was diagnosed by an LLMD last year with congenital Lyme disease, as well as several co-infections after several years of suffering with horrible brain fog, depression, vision problems, and memory loss. I was so happy to finally get a diagnosis. Since then, I have been getting treated, but I have not gotten any better at all. I'm a single working mother, and between visits to my LLMD and the formulas I buy from her and paying for things for my child, I am struggling to stay afloat. I do not have any health insurance, and it's getting to the point where I am looking into food stamps. My LLMD tells me that I will get worse if I stop the treatments now because the bacteria are smart. An LLMD, if you don't know, is a Lyme-literate medical doctor, but the way she talks about this supposed doctor of hers makes it sound like he may be a snake oil salesman. Her description of the treatments are vague, and the language of calling bacteria smart seems odd coming from a doctor. There's more. She later says it's useless for her to go to a traditional doctor where she'll just be laughed at, and that she's starting to see signs of Lyme disease in her daughter. This indicates that she may not have Lyme disease at all. Or if she does, it is causing some sort of psychosis that's making her avoid real medicine, which is what she needs and may be getting some sort of Munchausen by proxy. This isn't just my interpretation. A lot of the comments on this very post have echoed the skepticism. Unfortunately, the woman seemed to continue going back to this suspicious LLMD and just got worse mentally. She would later make one of her last coherent posts in 2016. Lyme disease has eaten the intellect and mental acuity I used to have and made me a zombie version of myself. Archives of her account on the Wayback Machine only date back to 2019, but by that point, Is There Life After Lyme had devolved to posting completely incoherent sentences. The only posts that are remotely comprehensible read that she thinks she's being possessed by God. Urgent, God is entering into my body? Lyme disease can have effects on one's mental health, but it's very unlikely it was the sole cause of her psychosis. That is, if she even had the disease to begin with. Not long after this post, a user claiming to be her sister logged into the account and said that she had been hospitalized in 2019, but we don't even know if any of that is true. Whatever the case, this account is a testament to the importance of finding trustworthy medical practitioners and to how fast one's mental state can completely decline. Morbid Reality. Morbid Reality is a sub for sharing the darkest recesses of humanity, as the headline says. It isn't an edge fest for glorifying violence. It is a place to analyze, document, and discuss the darker aspects of humanity. We need places like this to remind us that this world is not entirely safe. Morbid curiosity is somewhat of a defensive mechanism. This sub was also helpful in making this video, with some of the just previous entries being found from archived posts on this page. The moderation is very tight and responsible. All posts require a reliable source, and it is against the rules to post about recent mass casualty events or to make light of the macabre content. Still, it is not for the faint of heart, and I don't recommend regularly browsing the page. It was created back in 2014. Thus, there's over a decade of blunt, objective descriptions and photographs of violent crimes, wars, accidents, diseases, and images that are just haunting. Coming on figurines. When flesh and blood women of normal proportions just don't do it for you, how about one built of ceramic with comically sized breasts that scale down to about the height of your ankle? With the rise of otaku culture online and the increasing popularity of possessing physical idols of your favorite characters, it was only natural that a fetish form around this stuff. Painting these statues, which can cost upwards of $200, has become such a widespread phenomenon that it warranted its own subreddit. I can't show you the pictures, but a lot of them are not things I'd be displaying in my house where guests could see them. So I imagine these figures must be safely hidden away, or these users just don't have guests. If you don't like the fact that the semen may harmlessly roll off the solid figurines like raindrops, you may want to soak up Coming on Plushies, which birthed this iconic image. Just look at that filthy ape. He's ready for it. Once again, this one's just gross, unless you're into it, but nothing really morally wrong here, besides the desecration of Donkey Kong. Subreddit Fedlegs, user Jim the Feeder. As a quick preface, Jim the Feeder doesn't seem to be a disturbed or dangerous person. He seems like an affable guy. He claims he donates any money he may make from this project to sexual assault awareness charities. The full glimpse into his literature is what is disturbing about this. Fedlegs began as a self-admitted piece of erotic fiction for Jim's oddly specific fetish. Despite his name, he makes it clear he's not into feederism or something weird like that. He's just into painting women's legs yellow. Jim's first post to the Fedlegs world-building subreddit was a photo of a yellow leg statue. Within a year, he had made the iconic Fedleg lore post. He prefaces it with this: I used this idea to attempt to create an extremely strange erotica. See if I could pull it off successfully. It seems as though I managed, but have since decided to abandon the idea to explore a more useful side of the universe. One that instead can be used as a platform to satirically explain sexual assault and political injustice. Fedleg's universe can be explored in two different ways, through psychology and plot, which I have come to prefer. Still, I admit that the concept began as an attempt to create an original fetish for the world. To my knowledge, that had never been done before, and I wanted to see if I could pull it off. So, in his words, this started as a fetish, but now he wants to explore this world he created for purposes of political satire and criticizing our male-dominated society. But it's not as though he just forgot his fetish. It's still very apparent from the writing. Prose of this post is decent, though it's not all that stylized, just very straightforward. It explains the disturbing origin story of Charles Fed Ostrog, also known as Dr. Fedleg. He's the guy painting women's legs, and he is very explicitly meant to be a villain. To summarize the very lengthy lore drop, Charles's father was an abusive religious zealot who mostly focused his rage on his daughter. One day, Charles's sister gets caught trying to sneak out while wearing a revealing dress. another key aspect of the fetish, and Charles watches as his father mercilessly beats her, and then his wife. Charles finally steps in to stop the beating and calls the police on his father. But this incident imprints a warped sense of womanhood onto him. Charles develops the ideology that in order to prevent more violence against women, revealing clothes should be banned. And to be clear, this is the ideology of the character, which the author explicitly disagrees with. For the media literacy guys, in Fedlegs' words, he's not a monster, he's a human and a bully with authority, and that's scarier than anything out of a fairy tale. Charles develops a method to punish women who wear short dresses and shorts, forcibly dyeing their legs yellow with permanent paint. He justifies this to himself as saving them, and eventually grows up to be this comical villain with a whole team of secret agents that kidnap women who don't fit his dress code. This goes to show how fetish art can be, well, art. Jim would continue to post stories in the Fedleg universe and later claim to be developing both a movie and a novel based on the universe, providing images as proof. At first I suspected this image of the supposed Fedlegs movie shoot was a photoshopped stock picture. Though Jim provided more pictures, and it seems like this is a real thing. Jim still hasn't released the short film or the novel, however, but he made some bold claims in the comments. Yes, this is being produced by myself and a team of women to bring Dr. Fed Allstroke to life. An official anthology novel has been written, and it will be fully illustrated through photography and interactive videos. The novel will release in the fall. As of right now, it is about 200 pages. We haven't decided if it will be sold and the profits donated to victims of sexual assault, or if it will be free with an optional donate button. The book will also come with a QR code that will lead you to a YouTube channel to stream videos as well as an original short film. This was 4 years ago, and there's still no updates, but Jim did pop into Reddit a few times over the years. He hasn't done anything Fedlegs related since releasing these images, but he mostly talks politics. So Jim seems like a decent guy. But reading his fiction is not just disturbing on an existential level with its dystopian and patriarchal elements, but from the angle that it's just an odd fetish that became its own thing. Nowadays, as Jim has moved on, the Fedlegs subreddit itself has just evolved into a pure fetish and meme subreddit, as a bunch of other people have figured out they're into yellow legs too. Make me suffer. The motto of Make Me Suffer is, if it hurts to look at, post it. Don't let the subreddit's meme-looking emoji profile pic and banner fool you. This is a place that's designed to make you wince. Though it doesn't allow adult content or major or minor injuries that are untreated, so you can't just go on LiveLeak and grab some guy's last moments, you have to get creative. Thus, the posts are filled with post-surgery scars, weird growths on people's unmentionables, and just generally gross things. Sometimes they just rely on the implication to make you wince. Though it doesn't allow adult content or major or minor injuries that are untreated, so you can't just go on LiveLeak and grab some guy's last moments, you have to get creative. Thus, the posts are filled with post-surgery scars, weird growths on people's unmentionables, and just generally gross things. Sometimes they just rely on the implication to make you wince. You can post an injury as long as it doesn't look like you're gonna die from it and you've gotten treatment. So some people show off their nasty infections. Most of the content is original, as in it comes straight from the user who posted it. So there must be some catharsis to post these photos. By making someone suffer along with you, you sort of get to share in the pain. And as social creatures, empathy is a powerful drug. Back Row Creeper. On Sunday, May 27th, 2012, user Depraved asked Reddit, "What's the most shameful thing you fapped to?" One throwaway account made a confession that wasn't just shameful, but heart-wrenching and deeply creepy. The thread and comment was deleted, but it's been archived in screenshots. I keep a folder on my computer called Picture of Dead Girls. It's not what you think, but it's still terrible. Whenever the creeper sees a news story about a dead girl, he'll go search for a photo of her face to see if he finds her attractive. Then, add her photo to his folder. He gets off to the thrill that the girl, in his mind, will be more or less forgotten, as he puts it. He likes to get off to photos of the girls and imagine that he must be the only person thinking of them. He goes on, "And yet, as I dredge her memory out of the darkness, it's not to venerate her or celebrate her life. It's to desecrate her." He finishes to the thought of the fear and desperation they felt before they died. It's a deeply upsetting comment to read. The thought that someone, somewhere, just might be getting off on the fact that your daughter, wife, cousin, or friend was murdered. And these people are not as forgotten as the cynical fetishist claims they are. It's so crazy to think that you absolutely, positively can do something extremely fucked up to someone else without ever interacting with or directly harming them. Smegma lovers. This subreddit is dedicated to people who are really into poor hygiene under the foreskin. Here's the thing. For those who are uncircumcised, it's important to clean under the foreskin regularly. If you don't, a substance called smegma can build up. It's basically a mix of skin cells, oils, and moisture, and yeah, it's not something you want hanging around. The sub's full of guys posting stuff for fans who are really into that kind of thing. Promoting bad hygiene isn't a great idea. It can lead to urinary tract infections, yeast overgrowth, and other problems. Wholesome Gudo. You already know the definition of Gudo from earlier in the video. So what if when it is wholesome? So what separates wholesome Gudo from the rest? The sub doesn't explicitly state what, but looking at some of the images, which was not a pleasant experience, there were a couple of themes that contrasted them against the main Gudo sub. Some of the images were a bit more tame and cartoony looking, and the grotesque and gory parts might not have even registered as fetish upon first glance. Some depict goofy cartoon characters like Princess Bubblegum and Marceline from Adventure Time. Additionally, a lot of the subjects look content and happy with their dismemberments and mutilations. Not in spite of them, but because of it. If you're not into Gudo, you probably won't be able to get some of these images out of your head. It's marked as wholesome for how cutesy some of the content can be, but there is still some seriously messed up stuff on there that even a jaded horror fan would probably cringe at for its sexual elements. Very hard to see the appeal, but at this point, we know anything can be a fetish. Coffin of Andy and Lele. Alright, remember, this video is about Reddit. This entry isn't a review or criticism of the video game called The Coffin of Andy and Lele, but the game's subreddit. If you don't know, it's a horror, dark humor puzzle game about two siblings that decide to murder and cannibalize their neighbor. It also has RPG elements like its multiple paths and endings. It received a lot of praise when it came out of the gates, but then came the heavy controversy for one of its optional endings where the two siblings end up in an incestuous relationship. The creator told people that were offended by this to cry about it. There was a highly publicized doxing attempt against people involved with the game, not just because of the incest but for transphobic reasons too, and the head of the game's studio fell victim to it, with a lot of his personal information released. Game director Nemlai ended up scaling back their social media presence because of the harassment. So, we're not encouraging you to dox or harass the creators, or anyone in this video for that matter. However, a lot of Reddit, in its eternal degeneracy, were attracted to this game for the wrong reasons. Much of the subreddit is pretty much standard fandom stuff, fan art, memes, cosplay, and discussion. That being said, it doesn't take a lot of scrolling to find lewd fan art, a lot of which depicts the siblings together. Though it is a horror game and, at least ostensibly, the incest is part of the horror and dark humor, it's apparent that tons of people just get off on it. There's also some people making light of and finding pleasure in the domestic abuse elements. It really shouldn't be a surprise that people on Reddit were into the gross stuff in this game. Freaky stuff like this leaks into mainstream Reddit all the time. Remember that period when people on Old School Cool were posting scantily clad photos of their own mothers? You don't? Well, it happened, and it was really weird. So, this game plus Reddit was a recipe for disaster. Hank's Tank. Hank's Tank is a very deep rabbit hole that still has a lot of loose ends. If you scroll through the archive of this subreddit, you'll find a lot of posts with barely any upvotes containing edgy artwork, photos of women referring to themselves as 113, and occult conspiracy theory jargon. The going theory was that people migrated from some obscure forum to this creepy subreddit as everyone seemed very familiar with the lingo there, despite the place being only active for about 17 days in 2020 before being banned. It's not recommended you research this topic beyond what's on Reddit or YouTube because it does involve illegal content. It was first brought to people's attention in January 2020 from a post in Conspiracy. Users did some digging and found further evidence that this may have been a conspiracy theory or cult board that was involved in something illegal, such as their tendency to use numerical code words like the 113 that referred to women and allusions towards necrophilia and CP distribution. In fact, people would later realize that every photographed woman who the board referred to as 113 was in fact dead, leading to the conclusion that 113 was code for desecrating corpses. Some believe some of the users of Hank's Tank had access to these women's bodies. Other posts included people asking about poisons, and one guy even asks how to get admitted to a psychiatric hospital. That same user that posted about the psychiatric hospital was later asking in vague terms if he could be arrested for the contents of a laptop that was seized by police, implying he had something very illegal on there. Everyone else seems to be expected to know what it is without him actually saying so, indicating that everyone here could be culpable. It goes deeper too. After the banning of Hank's Tank, the users migrated to another sub called Colingus, where they went right back to their disturbing coded message exchanges. Like I said, this is a massive rabbit hole. The man who owned the subreddit was eventually identified, and he maintains it was all a joke, which isn't very believable. The investigation was documented in 3 lengthy videos by YouTuber Eudoxia Mysteries if you want the whole spiel. It's not pretty, and not fully explained either. NSFL. NSFW, as you probably know, stands for Not Safe for Work. Not safe for work content is something you wouldn't generally present in the workplace. NSFL stands for Not Safe for Life, as you may have guessed. Most of the photos in this are just disgusting, gory photos of accidents and self-harm. The pinned post makes clear the rules for the subreddit that were instituted on May 13th, 2013. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for your patience as we made some changes to the subreddit. We were contacted by Reddit about the state of this subreddit. The admins were open and honest with us about our performance as mods and their expectations of us and the sub moving forward. They welcomed any questions we had and clarified what content is allowed and what content is prohibited. Disallowed are animal deaths, children, racism, sexism, bigotry, homophobia, personal attacks, and disparaging comments about locations, subjects of the post, OPs, or other users. The top comment on this post from Sabers26 called these rule changes the beginning of the end of this sub, unfortunately. Lady Iris. Lady Iris is a Reddit user that was active from August 2015 to January 2016. If you take a scroll through her account, you'll find it's a roller coaster of posts about the subjectivity of morality and what seems to be a desire for self-harm, with her constantly seeking validation and justification for these. She asks a lot of questions, like why should we value human lives just because they are human lives? Why can't people accept that you can enjoy seeing innocent people suffer and die without being a sociopath, psychopath? What do you do when you feel like doing something horrible and criminal but don't want to deal with the punishment? One guy who replied to that last one saying, I fire up a computer game and do some horrible criminal virtual shit. She responds, is there anything physical that you can do? Can do? Sure. Loads of things. Do? Nope. I mean as a substitute, like a way to enjoy hurting others without risking prison. Not only is this woman looking for like-minded people to share in and justify her fascinations with violence, she's looking for ways to inflict harm without going to prison. The questions don't get any better. Her whole account is a constant barrage of queries from a disturbed mind. She was also weirdly active in Name Nerds, often commenting suggestions for baby names. The reason Lady Iris has gotten so much attention from the internet was for her shocking confession. She posted to ask Reddit, if skinning cats were a job, what hourly wage would you require to do it? To which she had an exchange with someone in the comments where they heavily implied that she had in fact killed a cat before, but didn't enjoy it as much as killing a person. Lady Iris's last post was perhaps her most disturbing, and definitely would have warranted investigation. On January 5th, 2016, she asked Reddit, which location would you choose if you were going to commit a mass shooting? The post was taken down before anyone could respond, but weirdly, she was not banned for it. She's not logged in since, but that's definitely for the best. Let's hope this clearly disturbed individual is getting help. Confessions of a Donor Baby. Confessions of a Donor Baby was a post from a now deleted user made to the Raised by Narcissists subreddit in July 2015. They're not referring to a sperm donation baby, but what is also called a savior sibling, a child that is had in order to donate organs or stem cells to their older sibling, often to save their life. When OP's older sister got diagnosed with Fanconi anemia in preschool and would need bone marrow transplants, the parents had OP in order to save her life. OP's entire life revolved around being a tissue donor for her sister. I was not allowed to play sports. I can't risk injury because who knows when my sister's going to need a part of my body. I couldn't eat a cookie or anything that's not vegetables or fruits or tofu or chicken breast. I had to maintain impeccable health so my organs or blood or whatever would be ready for harvest at any given time. I wasn't allowed to take any medicine because my sister might need emergency surgery any time, so how could I let drugs stream through my veins? My mom actually made a huge scene when a school nurse gave me Tylenol for my headache. No summer camps. Can't risk going far away from my sister. When OP was 12, her sister had renal failure. OP didn't have much choice in the matter and had to go through an organ donation. A traumatic thing for a child, but anytime OP so much as expressed discomfort, her mother, quote, bashed me and treated me like a cold-blooded psychopath who wanted her sister dead. Her mother's issues prevented OP from making friends, even at home, as her father stayed out of the house and her older brother was basically given free rein to do whatever he wanted on a credit card her parents paid for. When it was time for OP to go to college, her mother forged rejection letters so that she wouldn't leave and was forced to go to a local college. My school required all freshmen to live in the dorm, but my mother somehow made them make exception. I guess she needs to be there for her terminally ill sister is a good enough reason to bend the rules. Eventually, when OP was 19, OP's sister got liver cancer. OP didn't initially want to donate to her as she was now an adult, but her mom again pressured her into it. OP even wanted to end it, but was talked out of it by a doctor. After all that, OP's sister died of complications from the surgery. I wasn't even sad. All I could think was that I was free. I had to force myself not to smile at her funeral. I do really sound like a cold-blooded psycho now, but without her, I could finally be myself and not some backup plan in case her own organs failed. The first thing I did after her funeral was applying to universities in foreign countries for transfer so I could get the hell away from the people who treated me like a pig at a butcher house, strip me of my life, and take away whatever body part they needed. I am going to start a grad school stem cell research program in a month, and it got me thinking about what got me into this field in the first place. Maybe someday I could grow organs so no more people like myself have to suffer. A really sad story. And I can't help but feel the OP is very vindictive towards her sister. It's good she came out okay and she is 100% the victim in this, but I hope she was able to forgive her sister for her mother's behavior. She doesn't go into detail in the original post, but as she said in a comment, we didn't really have a sibling relationship. She spent so much time in hospital wards, and when she was not in hospital, I was buried in books, trying to finish school as soon as I can. When I was in hospital, it meant that her organs were failing, so she didn't really have strength to talk or do anything. Basically, she didn't have time to treat me in any way, good or bad. At the end of the day, at least OP is now living with her own life. Parasite Man. This post was archived by user Girod95 from Confessions, but I couldn't find an original date for it. The Parasite Man story begins in a way you don't want any story to begin. My obsession hurts others around me. It's also my fetish, but it goes far deeper than that. OP says that when he was young, he got pinworms, parasites that live in the colon or rectum. He became fascinated with the idea that a body could house a whole colony of life. When OP made the post, he'd been studying parasites for the past decade. He also has been infecting himself with non-lethal parasites like tapeworms, and he claims he even had pinworms as he wrote the post. He didn't just enjoy it, he got off on it. I also keep multiple creatures of bedbugs and leeches in containers and allow them to feed on my blood sometimes. Although those kinds are not really my passion as they do not live primarily on the human body, but I think they're interesting nonetheless, and I find them pretty cute. He goes on to explain that his fetish has evolved from masochism to sadism. He's begun purposefully spreading parasites to friends, family, and strangers. Maybe it's just a mental illness, or maybe its origin is parasitic in nature. I really don't know. All I know is it feels good when I do these things. I feel an intense need to spread my children, and when I do, I feel pleasure. It's an interesting thought that somehow one of these parasites may have wormed its way into his brain and begun influencing him to spread the species like some kind of zombie. Definitely not true, but still an interesting thought. He goes on, I must have spread thousands of my children over the years. I sometimes sprinkle tapeworm eggs into people's drinks when I'm out at clubs. I also caught public lice from sex with a random woman I met at the same club, and in return, I'm pretty sure I gave her pinworms, so it was a trade. He also spreads them to food at buffets and other places, referring to the parasites as his children, which makes this whole thing read like fiction, which I suspect it is. The ending just sounds like a supervillain monologue. I'm sorry to all the people I have caused discomfort to, but it's for a cause beyond human understanding. Although this all can be justifiable, I still feel guilt. I don't want to hurt anyone. I hope the people I spread my gifts to can find it in their hearts to be a little more open-minded and not kill my children, but learn to live with them like I have instead. I'm aware of how strange and disgusting others will find me if they knew. I'm aware of how immoral this seems to most people. I assume you see me in a negative light after reading this. But remember, I only want what's best for my children, and if you were truly in my shoes, I'm sure you would do the same. It's a nauseating post, enough to make anyone paranoid of being in public, but based on the way he doesn't start using the word children until the end of the post as though it were some kind of afterthought, I'm going to assume it's probably fake. Probably. Pretended to be my dog. This post comes from February 19th, 2016 on Let's Not Meet. It reads like a proper sleepover horror story, bringing to mind that humans can lick too urban legend. This one's allegedly real, however. OP, Flaxenflare, is a woman who lived with her husband at the time, but was home alone with her dog when the story takes place. At one point, she let her dog out in the back while tying his leash to a line outside to keep him in her yard. She goes about her evening as normal until she hears what sounds like her dog scratching at the door. She went to take a look through the peephole to be sure because, as she put it, she watches too many scary movies. Her fandom may have just saved her life because she looked through the peephole only to see a creepy older man in a hoodie scratching at the door pretending to be her dog. No sign of the real one in sight. She called her husband to come home before trying to open up a side door and to get her dog in. She didn't find the dog, however, and thus snuck back to the door the man was hiding behind. This time, when she looked through the peephole trying to get a photo of him, the man must have noticed movement behind it because he looked right at her and smiled. He then turned and walked off. Fortunately, never returned. OP's dog was later found unharmed, as the man had just cut off his leash and let him run off. As commenter It's Me Patty pointed out, since he cut the leash, he definitely had something sharp on him. The fact that he was able to approach the dog and know it wasn't going to bite him probably also meant that he'd cased the house out already and specifically waited for her to let this dog out as an opportunity to break in. Creep shots. Creep shots is probably the most egregious example, besides jailbait of Reddit being way too lax with its sexual content policies. The earliest archive of this subreddit goes back to July 1st, 2012, though you can see there's some posts from up to 7 days before that. The fact that the subreddit calls its users creepers shows that they aren't just perverts, but people who are proud of their perversion. Based on the Wayback Machine, it seems that it was finally banned sometime around 2012. It's good that it was banned in this era of Reddit, but it's insane that it was even allowed to go on for more than a week. There's no telling how many posts were made to the subreddit during this time, with cringy captions like, "Hey there, Miss Booty," and "It's nice, I like," ass in short tight jeans. How many women were unknowingly exposed to the over 6,000 active users on this subreddit that saw it as their right to violate them like this? Persona Pervert. Persona is a Japanese RPG video game series that's known for its bouncy soundtrack, lively art styles, and a lot of romanceable characters. The Persona Pervert was a guy. Traces of his Reddit posts were nuked from the site, but archived in a pastebin on the Internet Archive. He would make posts to harken in on his obsession with the female characters in the Persona game series that went beyond being aroused. Some of his hypotheticals included, how do you think the Persona 3+4 girls would react to being SA'd? Before going on to list each individual character and describe his own sick fantasy about what they would do. Other questions that followed the same format included, if you killed the Persona 3-4 girls, prepared their body, and ate them, what do you think their meat would taste like? If the Persona 3-4 girls suddenly grew penises, what do you think they'd be like? What would intercourse with them be like? If you kidnapped and brainwashed the Persona 3-4 girls into slaves, how would it go? How much would each finished girl sell for? If the Persona 3-4 girls were the stars of a massive, think 100+ man gangbang, how do you think they'd act? How would it go? Contrast this to something like, if you kissed the Persona 3 and 4 girls, what would it feel like? How skilled at it would they be? And it demonstrates a mind that was severely detached from reality, probably far too online for one's own good and infested with thoughts of his disturbed fantasies, that for some reason he felt the need to share with others in. He made a lot of these posts before his inevitable ban and seemed to take the hint, because he's never seemed to resurface online. Special Needs Devil. On June 15th, 2019, a woman posted a sad story that she expected derision for. She actually wound up receiving a lot of support. I'm a single mom of 2 boys, 12 and 7. My husband passed away 3 years ago in a work accident. A very large portion of me believe it was him. I can't see him ever making the mistake he made that caused his death, and he had taken an action just before that which ensured his co-workers weren't in the room. I fully believe he did it himself because of our younger son, and no one will ever change my mind. You see, when she was pregnant, she was informed their kid would have Down syndrome. They figured they could handle that. Actually, she was sort of looking forward to it. But when he was born, they found out that Down syndrome was not an apt description. He seemed to not even have any form of conscience. His eyes locked into one place. The child had never in his 7 years of life made any attempt to interact with anything at all. He was tube-fed and in diapers because he just didn't do anything, barely even had base survival instincts, and never cried. The OP describes having no love for this child without any sense of self at all. He took up all their time and was unable to reciprocate so much as a proper thank you. One day, she heard her older son yelling at him, "You're why I don't have a mother. You're why I don't have a father. You're why I can't have friends over. You're why I can't be in sports. I didn't ask for you, and I hope you die." She argued that this kid breathes but isn't alive, and thus, with this final straw, she decided to put him in a care facility indefinitely. He's already taken my husband and my son's father. He was working so much OT to pay for the cucumber's care, for the experimental therapies insurance wouldn't cover, because this one was going to be the breakthrough. He was tired and defeated and disappointed. He sought counseling as well, but I don't think he could ever say the words, "I don't want my son in my home either." This post was deleted before, so in the re-uploaded version, she offered to show her ID as evidence she was serious about this post. She was genuinely incensed at the post being taken down, so it's very clear that she desperately needed to get this off her chest for anyone who would listen. This woman was put in an impossible position, and honestly, I'm surprised it took her 7 years to give up the child. She's sort of right. He's not a kid with Down syndrome. He had no personality whatsoever, and had no future. There was no need to continue dragging her own life and the life of her son down any further. She called herself Special Needs Devil in her username because, again, she expected derision and felt guilty for her decision. But like I said, she got a lot of support. While some people didn't like the language she used to describe the child, which is fair, they were pretty much on her side. Like this one from Chunk. "I work with profoundly disabled children every day, so I probably understand better than most. Unfortunately, in the vast majority of cases, a miraculous treatment for brain disease doesn't exist, especially if there was nothing there in the first place. Most times, the best you can hope for is to slow the progression of damage. I'm sorry for what your family has been through, and I wish the best for you." So yeah, the OP did the best thing for her family, but it's still such a disturbing post. The thought that your child could come out in such a way, and the fact that now this other kid isn't going to grow up with a father because of it, you can only feel sorry for everyone involved, including the disabled kid. "I think my BF is drugging me." On October 9th, 2018, user Intrepid Sport posted to the Legal Advice subreddit, "I think my boyfriend has been drugging me to make me forget things. He is a doctor." Intrepid Sport describes having gaps in her memory that seem to happen whenever she goes on dates with her boyfriend. The reason why becomes apparent when she describes waking up with dried semen on her chest without remembering it getting there. She first thought she was getting drunk, but there were times she knew for a fact she wasn't having alcohol. So she decided to break up with him. However, to her knowledge at least, she had a large gap in memory again and found herself on a date with him with no memory having actually broken up, just the resolve to. She remembered nothing before coming to the restaurant, even though both of their cars were in the parking lot, indicating she drove herself there. She decided to stay at his place for a few days for some reason, beginning to trust him again slowly as some of her memories returned and figuring the issue was natural. That was until her boyfriend pointed out some sores on her leg that looked like injection marks. She seemed to think he was almost mocking her by pointing out what he was drugging her with. The next day, she went home, but he came over to check on her and once again experienced another memory lapse, waking up with dried semen on her chest. The day OP made the post, she ended up at lunch with him, although she thought she hadn't agreed to do so, despite him saying she had. Her friends and employers have begun to notice her strange behavior, so this whole thing is clearly affecting her life. This is a nightmare scenario, and aside from a few comments, OP never updated the post properly. We really don't know what may have happened to her, but she did indicate she was going to the doctors, so let's hope she just got her help and didn't feel like sharing anymore. Secret Notebook. The original post that has been archived on Tip of My Tongue by an apostrophe was made by a throwaway account on relationships in July 2017. The OP described herself going on a cleaning spree one day and sorting through her husband's closet when she discovered a hidden notebook. Nearly every page was an in-depth document of every single woman he seemed to encounter. It wasn't just his friends or family, but random women he had one-off interactions with, like clerks or passerbys. The worst part was as follows. He described what they were wearing, their hairstyle and makeup. The most detailed notes are about the shape of their body and the size of particular parts like boobs and hips. He comments on their weight, their proportions, how attractive or unattractive he thinks their breast, waist, butt are, how their outfit hides or reveals or emphasizes those features, sometimes ranking them on a scale of 1 to 10. She's never noticed any red flags in this guy, never suspected he cheated or was up to something weird, and most of his friends were guys anyway. Their relationship was communicative and had a healthy sex life, so this creepy journal, which seemed to go back 5 months, really threw her off. The OP never seemed to make any updates on this post and didn't leave any comments before her account was suspended. It did get a lot of attention though, and lots of people had theories and advice. The most plausible one was that this was a result of some kind of OCD. People with OCD can become obsessed over very specific ideas, which can manifest in note-taking like this. So perhaps OP's husband is a mostly normal guy that's venting his obsession with women's bodies through writing? That's about the most hopeful example we can think of because it would mean he is mostly harmless, just neurotic in a creepy way. Still, I would be very concerned if I found anyone with a notebook like this, especially since it harkens in on the women's bodies so much. It may speak to how the husband views women as a whole, which is to say, pretty objectifying. Immobile. I'd like to say that we can all agree that eating until morbidly obese and immobile is an objectively bad thing. The internet can often disappoint us, however. Immobile was also something I'd expect to be a support group, but was in fact a fetish subreddit. This one was hard to research because it has been rightfully banned for promoting self-harm, and its archives on the Wayback Machine are blocked by the age restriction on Reddit. The only archive of this original subreddit I could find was a screenshotted comment from user 719696 on the Sad Cringe subreddit. That was until I found this post. From SSBBW Support. Finally immobile, looking for any advice. Well, it's taken a while, but it's finally happened. I can't move around myself anymore. Like, at all. LOL. Obviously, my mom and I have prepared for this, so we have things in place to help, but I'm wondering if anyone has any tips which could help. I found washing particularly difficult, so yeah, if you have any advice, I'd appreciate it. I thought at first this was a support for getting past the situation, given the support part of the subreddit, but that optimism was dashed when I saw the top comment said, "Congrats, it's a big step." So, I hope you keep us updated. You mentioned that your mom is ready to help you, which is surprising to me. She sounds like a really wonderful mother. Most parents aren't too happy to learn about their child's desire to be immobile. So, how did she react? Good God, there's another one. Why would you want this? Why would you want this for your child? What is even going on here? The actual sub isn't fully centered around being immobile, but it does seem to be a place for promoting it. True femcells. So we heard about incels. What about the other side of the coin? Well, it's actually kind of hard to call them the other side of the coin. Yes, the subreddit was full of genuine hate against the male gender, and they did use a lot of the same language as the incel community. Take, for instance, their headliner, a community of the truest femcels. Vent, dear sister. Chad, Stacy, and their incel friend Billy Betabucks are never going to accept us. Feel free to rot now. That being said, for one, this subreddit did start out as a satire page that quickly became the real thing. Another thing worth noting is that a lot of posters have been victimized by men in some way, be it bullying or sexual assault. Still, it was not a very healthy place at all, circulating similar ideas to what incel subreddits promoted. Be it jealous posts like "Do white Stacy's fall off the hardest?" and making rules like number 1, no moids allowed, and number 2, no personal attacks, while, being filled with personal attacks. Also disturbing are when the women do share their negative experiences with men, like that of their sexual harassment. Moids in my inbox. The subreddit went private in 2020 and was banned a year later. There's a link to a Discord server floating around, but I can't imagine it'd be all that good for one's mental health or outlook to join it. Brain fucking. The description of this subreddit says, not to be confused with the programming language, this is a place you probably will not be interested in unless you are into the penetration of the organ called the brain. And yes, you heard that right. Brainfuck is a programming language too. I didn't look at it all because, gross, but it seems to mostly just be artistic representations in a comical manner. Definitely one of those fetishes that everyone involved knows isn't realistic in the slightest, so it remains in the realm of fantasy. At least I hope it remains fantasy. The sub does have a rule against real violence. It also seems to be a mix of women fantasizing about receiving and guys fantasizing about giving it. Not much else to say here other than that the mods are named Brain Fucking Shit, Brain Fucking You, and Brain Fucking Mod Team. Post-it notes. On May 1st, 2015, user rbradbury1920, who probably isn't actually Ray Bradbury, made a post to legal advice to ask about a disturbing situation. Mr. Bradbury had been finding post-it notes stuck throughout his apartment with reminders of errands he had to do. Thing is, he didn't remember writing any of these notes. He set up a security camera one day to see what was up and found a note reading, "Our landlord isn't letting me talk to you, but it's important we do." The footage that the camera recorded had been deleted. So what was going on here? Some of you probably already know this story, or at least you have a sneaking suspicion to how it ends. User Kakerlak commented a few suggestions, one of which was the following. Or it might be a physical problem. You mentioned that you have a very unusual narrow bedroom with no windows. Is there a chance that you are not getting enough ventilation when you sleep, or that there is a carbon monoxide leak in the building? A cheap carbon monoxide detector, which you should have anyway, is a fast way to find out. You'll also have really bad headaches. Initially, the OP did think the landlord was stalking him, but in an update posted a day later, OP had this to say. Update, MA, post-it notes left in the apartment. Thanks to everyone who sent suggestions and gave advice on how to proceed, especially to those who recommended a carbon monoxide detector. Because when I plugged one in the bedroom, it read at 100 parts per million. Too long didn't read. I had carbon monoxide poisoning and thought my landlord was stalking me. Good that Kakerlak suggested this and the OP was able to solve this issue. Still, it's crazy to think that our Bradbury 1920 could have been killed like so many others. Clueless Jock. In January 14, 2018, a Saudi Arabian Redditor named Clueless Jock made a desperate post to Ask Gay Bros. I made the biggest mistake of my life by coming out to my parents and got kicked out of the house. Clueless now. Jacques explained that he's 15 years old and just came out to his parents in one of the most homophobic cultures in the world. They kicked him out of the house and threatened to kill him if he ever returned. His country has no resources for the LGBT+, and he's too young to get a job license. At the time, he explained he was staying with a friend, but wouldn't be able to do so long term. The subreddit's users came to his aid and offered their support, proving themselves as better father figures than OP's actual father. Redditor Viator in Love with Russ offered to sponsor him in order to move the country, and they would wound up exchanging emails. Viator and OP later updated their post to say that OP was moving to Dubai with some distant relatives that were more accepting of the situation, but that his father was apparently now trying to track him down with the intent to murder him. OP, who we would later come to know as Rashawn, had the goal of staying with his uncle's family for a time, then moving to the US or somewhere in Europe. Unfortunately, the story does not have a happy ending. Viator returned to the thread later with a sobering update. For those following Clueless Jock, I just received the following message from his uncle 15 minutes ago. Dear Mr. Viator in love with Russ, I'm Rashawn's uncle, Musafir. It is with a heavy heart I must inform you that Rashawn decided to end it in February. His father, my sister's husband, threatened to kill him if he was ever found at home. Sadly, we couldn't get him out of Riyadh in time, and he was found lifeless in his friend's house. I managed to get into Rashawn's email account via his phone and found this email conversation and thought it is important you know. I'd like to thank you for your support and care. You were the only person who Rashawn opened up to and spoke freely. Inshallah, he too is looking down on you and thanking you. His funeral was held in Dubai as well as Riyadh, his home, but I'd like to believe he will always be around me here in Dubai. Thank you, Musafir. I'm literally in tears as I post this comment. I never met him, but we exchanged many messages over a month period. What a fucking waste of young life. Rashawn was a young man who deserved a loving family. He may have found one in his uncle's side, but the hatred from his immediate family and the rest of his culture still killed him, all because of his sexuality. I hope he knows his selflessness was not for nothing, as Rashawn was at least able to feel the love and support coming to him from overseas. Can't tell Moyism. Cults have evolved in the age of the internet. There's been stories of cults making and inhabiting video games, YouTube channels, and yes, even subreddits. Cancel Moyism, a subreddit which was banned in 2020, posited itself to be the official subreddit for the newly emerged internet religion Cancel Moyism, approved by the Lord, Chris CGC, himself. Feel free to post anything here, except not safe for work, not safe for life content. If you check it out on the Wayback Machine, you'll be greeted by a sickly purple or blue color scheme, an older man in the banner flexing his muscles, and some bizarre pinned posts. One reads, Einstein was wrong. It isn't E equals MC squared. It is E equals MC cubed. And something about a man called David returning from a coma. Apparently, the dogma of this cult was that DMT is a holy substance. Chris was a demonstrable narcissist, constantly having his followers refer to him as a god, among other things. Here's a thread where Chris has an argument with another Redditor outside of his cult. Please do not give uninformed advice. You know not of what you speak. You have no idea what psychedelics are or what DMT enables. Study my writings. You have literally nothing better to do, I assure you. I've explained solutions to every single thing you've ever wondered about. You will be dumbfounded and awed by the breadth of my knowledge and the sheer volume of my comments and posts here. I am not kidding. The king has arrived. It's me. I'm Chris Canelmo, Yale biochemist, entrepreneur, Ironman triathlete, blue water spear fisherman, marathon runner, mountain biker, surfer, writer, poet. I build my own furniture, rebuild cars, did Burning Man before it was Burning Man, 200 plus Grateful Dead shows, discovered a cure for cancer, explained schizophrenia and autism and instincts in animals. I pointed out the flawed reading of the second law of thermodynamics and corrected Einstein's energy equation to E equals MC cubed. I bang porn stars. Who are you? In an unusual move for cult leaders, Chris would often pay people to join the cult, rather than charging them, showing that it was more of an ego and mental illness thing for Chris than some kind of grift, as cults often are. It was still just as dangerous as any ordinary cult, encouraging drug abuse in place of real medicine and goading people to come to his home in LA to try them. His credibilities of being a biochemist from Yale were true, which is part of why he was so dangerous. People would listen to him, even though Yale biochemists are just as susceptible to mental illness as anyone else. When word finally leaked that Chris Cantelmo had lied about having cancer and curing it with his DMT, he released a deranged, ranty video on his YouTube channel, doubling down on all of his claims. This, combined with his incessant spending and his subreddit being banned, led to him being broke and losing his influence over his followers. On November 24th, 2019, Chris was found dead by suicide. Chris was a dangerous man, but he was also apparently a victim of mental illness himself. It's unfortunate that a man who was known for being bright, talented, and articulate in the past was led to waste his potential because of depression and drug abuse. It's good that his influence has melted away, since this death cult could have gone for way longer and led to way more casualties. Still, the whole story of Chris is rough. You can find more info on Cancel Moyism exposed or in the Vice article by Nick Thompson, where a lot of this information came from. Joe likes music. Reddit user Joe Likes Music was a regular at this hotel, but on February 17, 2013, he posted a very unusual and creepy experience with the place on the Houston subreddit. Zaza Insider's question: what's up with room 322? He and a colleague booked this room at the place last minute, but when they entered, they found a very unusual bedroom that didn't even look finished. As you can see from the Imager album he included, it was smaller than a normal hotel room and filled with creepy artwork. When they asked the front desk about it, the clerk told them that the room wasn't supposed to be rented out and immediately moved them with no further explanation. This is where things get conspiratorial. The news publication, Chronicle, ended up getting in touch with Joe over this post, and they spoke to his friend who stayed in the room. They got a quote from the director of public relations at Hotel Zaza that actually seems to demystify the situation. Since the hotel is a historic hotel, our rooms on each floor vary in size, and they really wanted to use all the rooms in their existing size, said Zaza director of public relations, Kyra Kutz. This particular room, 322, also known as Hard Times, is compact in size but well equipped and a playful spin on a jail experience. Though it wouldn't be on this list if that was the whole story. Some people don't buy the jail experience explanation and are still suspicious about the fact that Joe was moved from this room. I don't blame them. This room is only a little bit like a prison. It's more like a tattoo parlor where they don't do a swastika, but they might do an iron cross if you pay enough. The running theory was that this room was somehow connected to the Skull and Bone Society at Yale, which is also known as Order 322, the same number as the room. This was brought to Reddit's attention on the thread by a user named Quakerlaw. The Skull and Bone Society is a not-so-secret society run by students that originated all the way back in 1832. It's not unlike a culty frat, as they apparently worship a goddess called Eulogia and have a tendency to steal stuff from other societies at Yale and a tradition called crooking. There's a lot of conspiracy theories about this shadowy society, which are examined in a film series called The Skulls. The biggest tell that this has something to do with college secret societies is the portrait on the wall. It's of Stanford Financial Group executive Jay Camo, who graduated Louisiana State University and is rumored to be involved in a supposed chapter of the Skulls at LSU known as the Friars. So this may have been meant to be a private room for Jay or chapter members, despite what the public relations director says. You can check out the Reddit thread for more evidence of this. Worth noting though, all the rooms at the Zaza have an eccentric theme. Google images of the rooms and you can find that they have one with a Chinese theme, an Art Deco theme, and more. All the rooms are individual to encourage repeat visits and photography. The room and its shadiness are creepy for sure, but it's unlikely anything truly sinister is going on here. If it is a private room for a secret society, it's probably just because rich people like to feel important and cool. Dr. Ramsey. The story of Dr. Ramsey was posted by user Sweet Mercy in March 2013. This story seems to take place in the 80s. OP was just 10 years old when a man approached her while walking home from the store. He introduced himself as a pediatrician named Dr. Ramsey. She ignored him, but he pestered on. Are your parents looking for a pediatrician for you? Of course, you're almost a big girl now. You'll be needing another kind of doctor soon, won't you? That's okay though, they can still bring you to me until then. What's your name? You have beautiful hair. I was just on my way to get some suckers for the candy jar in my office. Do you like suckers? When she got home, she ran inside her house and thought that was the end of it, just some weird guy. Until she began seeing him again. At first, she would spot him driving by her house in his car, always smiling and waving when he did. Her mother said he probably worked nearby when OP brought it up. One day, her father called her over and asked if OP was followed by a man named Dr. Ramsey. For some reason, OP denied it, but then her father asked the question, then how does he know your name? Not only that, he knew her sister's name, as he would brag whenever he would call the family's home phone to harass and threaten them. Obviously, they reported this to police, but since they had no solid evidence of wrongdoing, the cops couldn't do much. Though a family friend who was a cop began escorting the girls to school, and they stopped allowing the girls to go out alone. These measures just made the stalking escalate. One day, the family spotted someone hiding in their garage. When they pointed out the figure, the form of Dr. Ramsey bolted out. Her older brothers gave chase but didn't manage to catch him. The police had a physical description of him, but still, nothing came of this trespassing incident. Weeks later, things became extra violent when they found their dog hanging on their porch. Apparently, the police somehow ruled this as an accident. If they actually did their jobs, this probably wouldn't be a story. The OP continues. His phone calls became more informative in the meantime. He would talk about who was home and who wasn't. If my brother would say my dad was home, he would tell him who was really in the house. He would also talk about the house itself, about the window in the kitchen he could easily open with a knife from the outside even when it was locked, and about the French doors that connected the living room to the side porch and how the lock would be finagled from the outside if you jiggled it just right. For some reason, the OP's parents leave OP home alone with no one but her sister and little brother. She's watching Devo on television when the French doors burst open. Dr. Ramsey is breaking in, which he has literally been threatening to do this whole time. The girls ran upstairs but realized their brother was still down there, asleep. When the girls went back down, they found he fortunately didn't get all the way in and scared him off by saying they called the cops. They don't bother calling the cops because they've been useless this whole time and wait for their brothers to get home. Everyone is staying up late, armed with kitchen knives. One of the brothers goes to the kitchen and he gets the sense someone is watching him. When he approaches a window, he finds Dr. Ramsey smiling at him creepily from just the other side. He looks away to yell at the others, but when he looks back, finds he's gone. Next night, parents still aren't home for some reason. They hear knocking on the window, but don't find anything when they investigate. They don't encounter Ramsey again until weeks later when OP's at school and spots his blue pickup truck and grin going by the playground. This finally broke her father, who began to sit downstairs with a gun each night waiting for Ramsey to really try something. This may have been enough to scare him off, because, as OP put it, then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. He had vanished from our lives. The phone calls, the drive-by with the creepy waves, everything. For a long time, during and after the Dr. Ramsey days, I would have a recurring nightmare in which I would wake up to find him standing over me as I slept. It took a long time before I felt like a kid again. OP speculates that her dad may have actually killed him and never told anyone. That, or he died or got locked up for an unrelated matter. Either way, she fortunately never saw him again. But this extended story of stalking is something that is not unheard of in this big, scary world. That being said, I do question the logic and decisions of some of the people in this story. If I were the parents, I wouldn't be going on a business trip and leaving my kids home alone while a pedophile was actively threatening to murder them. It made me wonder if the story was either fake or maybe a bit exaggerated. A lot of it reads like the OP's pitching a new adaptation of Cape Fear or something, and seeing that she had begun crowdfunding for a book based on this Reddit story didn't assuage my suspicions. That isn't my cat. Another Let's Not Meet post, this one is from May 2019 by user ApoCalix. Apo explains that their cat often likes to go outside. When he feels like coming in, he will sit under their apartment balcony and meow at the top of his lungs. Apo asks their neighbors to let them into their place whenever they're not home. They explain that their apartment has a standard door on their floor they can enter and exit, but the elevator also runs right through it, and you can access the apartment through there with a special key. OP says, the cat is used to the second option, and me too because we're both lazy, but when the neighbors that don't have the key let him inside the building, he goes up the stairs and waits. Since I usually use the elevator from the parking 2 floors below, that means I don't see him waiting in the hall and he meows outside the door to get me to open up for him, or my dad, or my mum. One night, while OP was home alone, they heard their cat meowing outside the door. I don't know about other pet owners, but I know my cat meows by heart. It's a kind of rising meow that's very high-pitched and very cute, and that also has a specific rhythm because I've been hearing it nearly every day for 5 years. So I stopped. The noise isn't what it usually is. It's too deep and just off. This isn't my cat outside my door, and he's the only cat around that knows he has to wait by the door and scream to be let inside. By that point, I had stopped halfway through opening the door and waited to hear him again and noticed scratching. My cat never scratches that door. At that point, I'm super weirded out by the situation, but the meowing is getting super loud and I didn't want the neighbors to be woken up. So I continued with my key, but suddenly I heard another noise that freaked me out. A cough. OP looked through the peephole and lo and behold, there was a man there. It wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't anyone she recognized, and after she called the police, nothing ever came of it. Still, that man somehow knew OP had the habit of letting their cat in through that door, meaning that he must have been watching and casing their apartment for God knows how long. Sink pissers. This subreddit is purely for people who like to pee in sinks, sharing videos and pictures of the said peeing in sinks while also sharing memes that are related to it. Many users would go onto the subreddit to criticize people there, including calling it a fetish thing mostly because they film it and post it for other people to see, while others criticize due to it seeming like hygiene is at stake. Someone posted a sign that they had found in a bathroom telling the users to not pee on the bowl rim, the sink, seat, or the floor, telling them it is not their house to dirty up. Posts would consist of people sharing how they started peeing in sinks, their own and even their friends' sinks, at the psych ward, the kitchen sink, and more, talking about how it isn't socially acceptable, so they go against the norms, how they aren't bothered to walk to the toilet, so the sink is more convenient. People talking about how they are marking their territory, while also calling different sink designs sexy. People from other subreddits often criticize the community, many of whom also admit to having a piss kink, by comparing it to other fetish subs and arguing about the potential damage it can cause to sink plumbing. One plumber commented, "The problem with peeing in the sink is that there can be a buildup of urea," later calling the habit gross. Another user stated, "Piss contains various calcareous minerals that will form a crystalline lining in the pipe. This will further collect more and more things until it's clogged, which can be quite nasty to unclog. As to why it can damage the pipes by clogging, which can also lead to a very bad smelling bathroom." The overall consensus is that everyone in the sub loves it, while people who aren't in it don't like it due to hygiene worries and worries about the pipes being damaged. Amusement dark. A subreddit for posting everything that goes wrong in amusement parks, weird signs, people breaking the rules, and abandoned amusement parks. Anything that is slightly creepy is posted here, with only two moderators, Sagisaki, who made the subreddit back in October of 2020 originally, and one more mod who joined back in November last year. In a post asking what people thought was the worst amusement park accident, a former lifeguard spoke about the Verrückt accident, referring to a water slide at a Schlitterbahn in Kansas City that held the record for the tallest water slide, reaching heights of 168 feet and 7 inches. It was demolished in 2016 after a collision that caused the death of Caleb Schwab, a 10-year-old. The former lifeguard had said, "I used to be a lifeguard at this Schlitterbahn. They built the slide my last year there, and we all knew it was a death trap. They offered the teenage lifeguards first crack at it, and every single one of us declined. They knew it was a death trap too." The rest of the sub are reports of accidents or people generally breaking the law, with blurry videos sprinkled here and there, but the further down you go, the more common not safe for work marked videos will become. The sub is fairly active with 27,000 members. Posts are up every time an accident happens, mainly trying to be respectful to victims and trying to spread awareness about neglectful park owners. Yet there are some people only there to see gore, like Watch People Die previously mentioned. The subreddit hasn't gotten into many controversies, with the owner doing a fairly good job of keeping trolls from getting in. The rules are strict and fair, and at the current time of writing, only 2 people are active in the sub. The posts range from being popular amusement parks to circus entertainers. Truly a broad range of things that can be posted in this sub, but everyone is respectful, which is something rare on Reddit these days. A parallel life, awoken by the lamp. This is a post by user Tempto Assassin, who claimed to have lived an entire life in the moments after a head injury, eventually waking up and noticing something was wrong with his lamp. My last semester at a certain college, I was assaulted by a football player for walking where he was trying to drive. Note he was 325 pounds and I was 120 pounds. While unconscious on the ground, I lived a different life. He then explains how he met a wonderful young lady, how she made his heart skip and his face red. He pursued her for months and dispatched a few jerk boyfriends and finally won her over. They got married and immediately had a daughter. He said he had a great job. His wife didn't have to work outside of the house, and when their daughter was 2, they had a son, and that son was the joy of his life. He would walk into his room every day before he left for work, doting on him and his daughter. One day, he was on the couch and he realized something was wrong with the lamp. He didn't go to work. He didn't sleep because he was just so transfixed on the lamp, certain something was wrong with it. He didn't eat and he only left the couch to use the bathroom, but he soon stopped that too, staring at the lamp for 3 days straight. Of course, his wife got worried. She tried to get someone to talk to him, but it didn't work. By this time, my cognizance was breaking up and my wife was freaking out. She took the kids to her mom's house and he had his epiphany. The lamp wasn't real. The house wasn't real. His wife, kids, none of it. To him, the lamp grew and all he could see was red, and it was still inverted dimensions. It took up his entire perspective. And then he started hearing voices, screams, and weird noises, and he became aware of his pain. The first words he said was, "I'm missing teeth." At one point, he was scooped up by a cop, throwing him in the back of a cop car and then taken to the hospital to be taken care of. But he was stuck grieving for 3 years knowing his family never existed. He would hope to see them in his dreams, but only ever saw his son in his peripherals. He mentioned that he did receive messages saying that he's lying and that such things are impossible, but many others said that they had the same type of experience. Ever since then, his story has grown amazingly popular, considered a glitch in the Matrix. The comments are filled with either people saying it's fake or people talking about similar experiences. Either way, it's an interesting story. Just chillin', singing a tune, and swinging a knife. This final post was made in December of 2020 by user going through a phase. When OP was a teenager, she began hearing a sweet, lilting tune, mixed with some conversation and laughter, emitting from her backyard. She assumes this is her neighbors at first, until she keeps hearing the same voice night after night. Thus, OP decides to investigate and finds, well, let's just finish this one with OP's own words. "I can't see anyone under the streetlight or in my neighbor's garden, and then I look straight down into my own garden. There is a man laying in my garden, perched up on one arm and swinging a butcher knife around in his other hand, while my dogs, spaniels, roll around him and look delighted with life. WTF. He's singing to either himself or my dogs. I run into my parents' room and they come to see what I have awoken them for. My dad, who's generally a quiet man, rips straight into action mode and grabs a shotgun and torch. This is North Europe. He used to hunt pheasants and foxes, IDA, and runs straight down the stairs. He opens the backsliding door, points the torch and unloaded gun at this guy, and yells in a manly voice he's never used before, "Get the fuck out before I blow your head off." This guy jumps to his feet, but quite gracefully, smiles and bows before jumping up onto our shed and hopping over the wall. OP reported this, but never heard anything back. Reddit and the internet have done something very funny for our lives. It's allowed us to get a full glance into human depravity and the darkness of nature from the comfort of our computer screens. It's reminded us we're never truly safe while reassuring us that we are. It's let us look at other people's suffering and think, couldn't be me, or perhaps that could have been me. Maybe after all this, we should visit iBleach. Just be careful you don't click iBleck instead though.